go. All right. Well, good evening. Welcome to Extended Range Class, night number 3. Over the last several nights, we've covered quite a bit of information, and I'm going to go ahead and present my screen. Share screen. We'll just do a quick recap. I'm going to do an entire screen share. And there we go. Tonight, we're going into Section 3, Extended Range Equipment, which is always the most fun. But just kind of recap overall. In the first night, we assigned out topics. So as we look at this, our topics that we had, David Pete's going to talk to us about temperature and effects underwater. We've got Eric going to talk about the saturation desaturation model. Bryce is going to hit us grace us with some decompression sickness. Donnie, when he shows up, we'll get to talk about Henry's Law. Dustin was very excited about equivalent narcotic depth. Ivan is extremely excited about Bullman. And finally, John's going to talk to us a little bit about equipment overall from the book. So that's what we assigned out. We also talked in night 1. We went over Boyle's Law, the basic ideas. We started introducing a little bit to equivalent narcotic depth. Tried to kind of Miyagi that in on you. We talked about the laws. We went over briefly how to figure out Dalton's Law and why it's important to us. And we specifically talked about, in practical application, how Dalton can be our best friend for best mix. And Dustin and I had an interesting conversation. So I think Dustin has a much clearer understanding of best mix today. We also talked about max operating depth. We delved into physiology a little bit, inert gas management and how it affects M values in our tissues. We talked a little bit about Haldane, and we went into the M value model as well. We kind of started looking a little bit at how a gradient factor works and what a gradient factor is. Getting into that, we actually looked at the Bullman table. I love looking at the Bullman table. It's definitely very, very interesting in my opinion. Talked a little bit about decompression stops and really went through those at a meaningful way. Talked about the gray line of silent bubbles as well. And then we talked a little bit about a different kind of safety stop for you as well. What to do in a missed decompression stop, what decompression stops actually look like, ceilings on those. And then we talked about half times. We came up with a simpler idea for half times. We continued with physiology. We really did a pretty deep dive into pulmonary and oxygen toxicity, as well as central nervous system toxicity as well, to make sure we had a pretty good understanding of that. Talked about convent, decompression illness, just briefly. Went into nitrogen narcosis, the mistress of the deep. And finally, we finished up with equivalent narcotic depth, which is definitely pretty important. We covered a little bit of hypothermia as well, which brings us to Section 3, where we're at currently, where we're going to start talking about the equipment. And it's perfect that John's going last because he's going to give us a fantastic, amazing description that's not sponsored by any equipment manufacturer out there or shop, because we know John's an independent, so we don't have to put up with the you should buy these 5 BCs because they're the best 5 BCs on the market, period. And I sell them all just by chance. So we don't have to go through that. Well, certainly support your local dive shop. Absolutely. Keep a local business in business, but also buy the right gear for you and your diving style. If that happens to align with the local dive shop, it most likely will. That's great. If it doesn't, and I will be the first to admit I have gear of my own that does not align with my any dive shop in Idaho, unfortunately, and I've ordered it elsewhere. But it fits with my diving style and my desire. So that's my pitch on that is if you can't, do what you need to do. In the end, it's your money, it's your decision, it's your comfort and ability to dive. So please be aware of that, choose the best choice for you. So jumping into it, we've got David going to talk to us about, what are you talking about to us tonight about?
I am talking to you guys about temperature effects of the underwater environment.
Gotcha. All righty. We'll just kick over to hypothermia. And David, it's 7:11 now. You have 8 to 10 minutes to present total. That's your hard deck.
Alrighty. So let me go ahead and share my screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation because I know how much the military guys love PowerPoints.
Perfect. You should be able to share whenever you like.
Okay.
Death by PowerPoint, man. Best thing in the world.
It definitely keeps me on track. That's for sure. I can definitely get off track if I don't have it.
Oh, let's see here. Share screen.
While he does that, I do want to talk for just a minute while he's pulling up and figuring his thing out. Guys, I don't want you to stress too much. If we get through the skills on our dives over the weekend that we've scheduled them, great. That's absolutely certainly a goal, and that's absolutely what we want to do. If we do not, if there's some skills that you have trouble with, and we just need to get you diving in the format, get you diving in the style, get you diving and understanding what the skills are about, that's great. I am not going to rubber stamp anybody that doesn't pass the skills, but that doesn't mean the class is over. It just means that we here's how I learned it in high school and college. I boxed. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but that's how I got to college. But coach always had a phrase that he said, a W is great, but an L is not bad either. He'd say a L means learn more. He says it just means you weren't quite ready to progress to the next level. You needed to learn more. So don't take anything that we do. If you don't make it through the weekend passing, don't quit on me. Don't stop. Just keep going. All I'm asking you to do is learn more. So.
Yeah, and I agree with what Ben's saying. We had a good conversation when I was up there doing some of my side mount training and my dry suit training. And so I agree with what Ben's saying with he's willing to work with all of us, even if he can't pass us off yet. We will get a pass eventually as long as we do the skills.
Just keep trying. I was actually interesting. I was talking to Mark Scott, who's a national training director with SSI and an instructor evaluator. And he said the ones that frustrated him the most were the ones that failed the ITC on the first or second, or the instructor evaluation on the first or second day, and then went home. They didn't stick it out through the rest of the evaluation, which I think is a huge mistake. If you're not going to pass it, stick around. At least know what you're going to. If you're going to go through it again, why not have as much of the answers as possible, right?
Going to see you paid the money. May as well take the class.
Absolutely. Well, and we all know John didn't actually have to do an evaluation. He just showed up. They looked at him like, okay, go home. You're good. So we know John's that good.
Looks like it. You got the haircut.
There you go. Absolutely. Me, I actually had to go. They actually made me prove my skills. I had to go in and actually do my evaluation. But John, we know he just showed up one day. They asked him if he wanted to teach the class, and he said, no. You go ahead and do it. And then he went home.
Go right ahead. I'll just use my spare air and.
Hey, I have one of those in the back. It's good to go.
Cool. How you coming, Dave?
Yeah, could you see my? I'm sharing my.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I just need to add it. There we go. I didn't add it to the screen. Sorry about that.
Yep. No problem. So, like we said earlier, I'm going to be talking about the temperature effects of the underwater environment. I'm going to specifically dive into more of the cold water. So I think it has a little bit more risk in it than warm water. So that's where I kind of focused on my presentation on. So cold water diving can be really fun with a proper understanding of the risks that cold water can have on the body. There's definitely a bunch of risks that we need to be aware of and understand. So the first big one is decompression sickness. That's how it works with cold water is when diving in cold water, your body will absorb less gas during its descent, but then the gas it does absorb, it releases less of it during ascent. So we need to be really focusing on making sure our stops are correct, and also maybe even limiting our dive plan a little bit if it's in a really cold water. Then some of the steps, if you end up getting decompression sickness or your body's showing signs, obviously you want to give them the highest oxygen content you have, provide first aid if needed, monitor the ABCs, call emergency services, and figure out the evacuation of the patient. We also have to be worried about hypothermia. That's when your body starts to lose heat faster than it can produce. Kind of the signs of hypothermia is like the first stage is shivering, reduced circulation. Second stage, everything's slowing down. You have a weak pulse, your breathing slowing, lack of communication. You can be annoyed, irritable, confused, and sleepy. And I didn't know that you actually could be sleepy with second stage hypothermia. I would have thought sleep was the last thing you would be doing, but it kind of makes sense where your body's starting to shut down because it's so cold. All the blood's going from your limbs, it's going and then going into your core. So that kind of makes sense. Advanced stage is pretty serious. Again, you're really slowing down. You're weak. Respiration could be absent, and you could potentially have no pulse. So, kind of the things, if you or your buddy has hyperthermia, we want to get them out of the water, and actually out of the wet clothes, out of the water. Give them a blanket. You want to monitor the breathing, and if it's severe enough, you're going to want to get them to the hospital because they have techniques to warm your blood, different things like that to bring up your body temperature. And which is really interesting fact that I learned is even at 72 degrees, you still have to worry about hyperthermia because it still will. You still could get it over a long period of time of diving. Anything below your body core temperature actually increases. You can get hyperthermia. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Even, sitting in a bathtub, you could technically get it if you've been exposed to it for a long time. And then overexertion. That's another thing we have to worry about. And the reason why I wanted to put that in there is because when we're going to be in cold water, we're going to be having all of our gear on, your wetsuit, heavy wetsuit, dry suit, undergarments, hoods, gloves, just heavier equipment. And so that you're going to have to work harder to do the same movements. So some of the definitions I found for overexertion is feeling dizzy, sick, pain, can't catch your breath. So I put pain in there because when I was diving with Benjamin, working on my side mount and dry suit, I got down to the bottom of the hill with all my gear, with everything on except for my tanks on, and my neck was just killing me. So I ended up having to call off the dive because I was overexerted myself. I was feeling pain, and I wasn't comfortable going in the water with the pain that I was feeling. So we have to be careful with that because we also can have our body builds up a poisonous gas, and if we're working harder, it builds up more. So we have to be deliberate in breathing, how much we're working. Just be conscious about it and understand what your body's feeling. With cold water, we have training and gear that we need to be thinking about. Some of the considerations if you're in really cold water is you want a dry suit with proper undergarments. That includes gloves and hoods, cold resistant regulators, a BCD that has more lift. And since we are in a technical class, if you're certified in helium, you want to consider using air or argon for filling your dry suit. The reason of that is because helium actually cools you down and lowers your body temperature. It doesn't have good thermo protection. Training, we need to be doing when we're doing cold water diving, or some of the training we can do is ice diving. We really should do rescue, first aid, oxygen training, and even dry suit training. And your local dive store and instructor can help you out figuring out the proper training that you would need for your area or where you're going. That's going to be kind of your ally on that. Another consideration we need to think about is a dive plan. When you're in cold water, you use more gas because your body is going to try to keep is going to be using more gas to keep you warmer. So we need to plan for more gas. We need to have proper exposure protection. We need to plan a conservative dive. And again, if you're using helium, consider using argon and air. Helium does not offer good thermal protections, and you will lose more body heat versus using air or argon. Argon's really cheap, so is air. And then we also need to, in our dive, when we're talking to right before we go on a dive, we were talking to our buddy, we need to cover cold water emergency procedures in case of hyperthermia or DCI. Any questions so far? No questions? Okay.
Nope.
You good?
In summary, Cold water diving can increase risk, but with proper training and exposure protection, it will open up a whole new world of diving. Some of the cool places that we can go diving is, especially around here, is some of our lakes. We can go up to the Pacific Northwest, up into the Puget Sound where it's really chilly, or even go to Alaska and dive with Alaska guys in some cool glaciers that they offer. So having good proper training, good proper gear, and a good understanding of what your body is doing is really important to minimizing the risk in cold water diving. And that is it for my presentations. If there's no more questions or any questions. Alrighty, well, thank you, everybody.
All right, let's go over it. So overall, part of this is getting you the kind of the idea of what we're looking for in tech diving and getting you into kind of some basic habits within tech diving. So first of all, there's a set of instructions that were at the beginning, and you got a copy. You all got a copy of that with the form of how we wanted it. So when we present a subject, we want to make sure we define the objective. What's the value? What is it over? What are we going to talk about as well? So make sure we go through the little detail things. It's a lot like tech diving. When you start out the process, what's the objective of today? What is the value? Why do we want to do this? An overview. What's the overview of our plan? What are we trying to accomplish with this dive? Is it a fun dive? Is it a technical dive? Is it a training dive? What is that? And so the sooner we can kind of get in those basic ideas of with everything we do with tech diving and diving in general, define our objective. What are we trying to do? And make sure we're hitting those. I like to use the SSI form for that. A couple of things to talk about. You got into DCS a little bit, but didn't really define the objective of why DCS is more concerning in cold water versus warm water.
Okay.
Certainly could have talked about Henry is a good one. It's a nice, easy one. Vasoconstriction, blunt shunting, any of those would have been real good ones to bring up as well. I like bringing up Henry because it's one that I think there's a lot of dive instructors that miss Henry, but it's in his law as the temperature of the liquid gets colder, gas dissolves faster. So it's one that I like to kind of throw in because it's one that doesn't get talked about enough. So we want to make sure we hit one of those three or all of them overall of that the gas dissolves better, that we have blood shunting because of vasoconstriction. We have blood shunting because our body's going to shut down. We have vasoconstriction because the veins are. So we want to go into kind of the why. Why is DCS is certainly a big concern of this. The other thing we might talk about is where does it get cold? It doesn't get cold in Florida by our standards, right? Although my kids would probably disagree that they were wearing jackets and jeans when we went in November, and Nikki and I are in a convertible and shorts. It's it's all perspective, I guess. But so talk about those kind of things. The other thing is as you go through this process, make sure you ask questions. Make sure that the people you're with are uptaking the information in a reasonable way. So if John and I, for example, are going diving, I like picking on John because he's a good sport about it. And I'm not saying this actually happened. So please, there's my disclaimer for the day. But if John and I are going diving and John and I decide that we're going to hit one of the walls over at Lucky Peak, that's a 140, and we're planning out a 145, I might ask him a few questions about that to make sure that he understands, especially if it's like his first big tech dive that I'm aware of, or if I just haven't been tech diving with him before, done big dives, I might question a little bit. So what kind of gas are you planning on this? What does that look like to you? And certainly question your buddy, or especially newer buddies or other people that you're not 100% familiar with. With Nikki, I very rarely question her, but I also do a lot of the setting up, and then we just talk about it. Hey, I'm doing this, this, this. I don't have to question her. She usually tells me, okay, I feel more comfortable doing this, this, this. And so we know we dive, but Nikki and I have 1,000 dives together, literally. I mean, so there's not as many questions that need to be asked. There's more just confirmations or just statements at that point. But, if John and I are going out, I'm definitely going to question a few things. It's not that I'm questioning him as an amazing bald-headed diver at all. I know John is absolutely fantastic, but I'll definitely want to understand some of his objectives, some of his motivations, and what a few things he's doing. I might even ask about his setup. I mean, what kind of setup are you using today? You're using a standard side mount? Fantastic. You use just, left-hand main, right-hand long? Okay, cool. And so you'll question to get that understanding. So as you guys build these presentations, think about those things, because this all applies, in my opinion, at least, over to tech diving. Other things that I would have liked to have seen in this that I think are reasonably important: signs and symptoms. What does hypothermia look like, and what are the different levels of hypothermia? How do I know when to get out of the water? Is it when I start shaking? Was it when I start feeling sharpness of pain, or is it when I stop losing feeling? Or is it when I start getting confused and dizzy? So signs and symptoms is definitely a good key to that, because it's things that I want you guys to understand that these are real things that happen. I mean, you can get hypothermia pretty easily, especially with what we're doing. I mean, Nikki and I were doing our dives in Florida, or not Florida, but Hawaii a few months ago, going out for 2.5 hours, 76 degrees, and she's in a 3 mil wetsuit. Absolutely. If we'd gone out for 4 hours, she absolutely would have been hypothermic, but she made about 2.5 hours before she started shivering, getting cold. And that was the time we're done. We're out of here. It's time to go get warm. Right. But 76 degree water, you don't think about getting cold to the point of shivering, where thermal comfort becomes more than you want to tolerate. So make sure you think about those things and recognize those in yourself and others as well. So signs and symptoms are huge. I firmly believe that the number one sign and symptom of any dive malady is denial. It's not that river in Egypt anymore. So that you gotta think about that. And so the first thing you have to do is start recognizing these. Symptoms are always a for. So that's my coaching for you today. I think you did a great job. Just want you to know that I appreciate you being the first. Going first sucks. And so good on you for jumping in the middle of it and saying, I'll go first. What the hell? And so hopefully you took a few things out of that. Did you take anything out of that?
Yes, I did. I definitely did. After kind of looking through my slides as you were talking about it, I do have some of the signs and symptoms, but what I should have done more is, kind of hit it home, as they'd say, right? Like really emphasize what we're looking for instead of just rattling off like first stage, second stage, advanced stage. Really talk about it in more detail versus high level like I had.
Absolutely. I think you did a good job. First out of the gate and never having done this before. Now, just be aware, as you guys, some of you guys will want to proceed past this into dive master and to assistant instructor, to assist instructor. This is that we're looking for. Starting off with a defining subject, the value of a subject, the overview of the subject, safe diving message, and somewhere in there, as well as desire to take other classes to have more knowledge, increase your knowledge, and then bring it all home with restate the object, that restate the value, and restate the overview of here's what we talked about today. And I don't know if you guys notice it or not, but every class I do this for you. I start, this is what we talked about the last class. I restate the objective, and I try to make sure to throw some value statements in for you. So I try. I don't always succeed, I'll be honest, but I certainly make an effort. So I try and lead by example to a certain degree. So good job. What do you guys think? Ivan, what did you think of his presentation? I like picking on Ivan.
Sorry, mic issues there. Yeah, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I thought it was good, informative, covered a reasonable amount, and yeah, it was overall good. Yeah, it was like you said, it was missing a little bit in the intro and the exit, and fielding specific questions to the group here. So, but other than that, it was a good presentation.
Thank you.
John, you score a fair amount of these presentations. How did you score him?
So we typically use a 5-point scale, and I would have given him 3 or 4, kind of depending on his not testing us out very much at the end and not restating his objectives, but that would be about the only thing I'd really call him on, unless I told him he was supposed to talk about gas laws. And he didn't do it. That's one thing open. Occasionally kind of skirt past something, and yeah, so probably 3.
There you go. Cool. Gotcha. Well, good job, David. Thank you so much. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Who's next? Aaron wants to go next. He's going to go for the big dog. So Aaron, talking about the saturation desaturation model. Do you need to share your screen, Aaron?
Yeah, I can in a second.
Fantastic. Got a lot of positive comments on your Dive Master certification over the weekend.
Finally got the paperwork done.
Yeah, that's all we were working on, is just getting you getting the paperwork done and getting that through. I definitely work hard to make sure I stay on the shop to keep them on top of that. Usually I'm successful. Sometimes it takes me longer than others, but I'm usually successful.
All right. So I guess, is there a button for me to share my screen or?
Yep, should be in the bottom center. Should say present.
Oh, present. Okay, perfect.
And once you present, I'll go ahead and kick it over to the main screen. And on a side note, if you need any kind of carpentry work that around your house, Aaron is a fantastic carpenter as well, and always looking for fantastic side jobs or garages to build.
Okay. So,
Aaron can be reached at 1-800-BUILD-MY-DAMN-HOUSE.
all right. So does everyone see my screen, or is it still?
I just see white.
Yep.
I don't know why. Try it again. It's just a Word document that's got a few things in it. So
No PowerPoint.
no, I don't know. PowerPoint.
But if you want it built out of wood, go to Aaron Christensen's House of Building.
I would have really respected a wooden PowerPoint, by the way.
Absolutely. That was a guaranteed A.
Okay. Does that one show up then?
There you go.
There we go. Okay, so I don't have a PowerPoint, but I'll just start into it. So the lesson objective today is to understand a little bit about saturation, desaturation models. In order to understand those, we're going to have to understand a little bit about decompression theory. As all of us are going into technical diving, the benefit to us to understanding how our body absorbs and gets rid of inert gas is something very important to us, especially into decompression diving, which we're all working on. So the first main topic is the theory of decompression, and that is the study of and modeling of the transfer of inert gases into and out of tissues. So the physiology of decompression is our body absorbs gas based on the atmospheric pressure around us. That's what we call dissolved gas phase dynamics. And honestly, when I was studying for this, we could do a 10 to 12 hour class and barely scratch the surface of all of the theory and dynamics of how gas dissolves. We're going to try and make that a little simpler to understand tonight. That all depends on the type of gas, the pressure, the ambient pressure around us, the temperature that we're in. Each individual person will also absorb and diffuse gas differently based on your body type, your breathing capacity, if you smoke, if you have had lung illnesses in the past. So those are many, many issues. So some of the, I guess let's go to one of the ways, I think I've got my things messed up here. So we absorb gas based on the atmospheric pressure is usually the biggest one. One thing I found interesting as I was studying for this is anybody been to like a really high mountain and got altitude sickness is a decompression sickness. So our body is used to having gas dissolved in the system at sea level, goes up to a 15, 16,000 foot mountain. You're going to have a little bit of decompression sickness because our body's not used to the air around it, and it takes time for that diffused gas to get out of our system. Same thing when we're coming up from deep diving. When we dive to anything below 33 feet, we have an additional atmosphere or more of pressure above us. So the gas that we're breathing is more condensed. And we talked about in the class a little bit about how, if we double the atmospheric pressure, that doubles the amount of nitrogen and oxygen we're getting into our bodies. That causes issues when we decompress. There's a few different ways we can decompress. One of the ones I found really interesting, and I guess we'd kind of talked about this, probably not in as much detail, is called isobaric counterdiffusion. This is something that is basically the theory behind hyperbaric chambers. We use, I guess, we can diffuse the gas that's been absorbed into our bodies through compression, diving, one of two ways. We can either move up to a lower compression or a lower atmospheric pressure by moving up in the water column, or we can actually change it by the type of gas we're breathing. So if we have 100% oxygen that we're breathing, we'll also start off-gassing nitrogen even at the same level of water, which I found really interesting, that we could off-gas nitrogen just by switching to a decompression gas. And we'll go over that a little bit as we get through the models in the slide, or in the visuals that I have. But we talked a little bit about decompression sickness in all of our classes. That kind of is the big, I guess, black cloud that hangs over all diving, is something we can have an issue with decompression sickness. We've touched on some of those illnesses, so I won't go too deep into those, just to know that we have decompression sickness to worry about if we don't decompress properly. So when I was studying for this, it kind of came across as two really main concepts for decompression models. So the first model, this is the first page that you see there on the screen, is a kind of a compartment model, similar to what Bowman had used, but this one is the Goldman interconnected compartment model is what this is. So before Bowman did a lot of his research, this is kind of the thought process. So as we see on the first sign, or the first line, serial compartments interconnected. So this would be tissues that, let's say, are close to a blood vessel or close to where the gas is diffusing into, or compressing into the body, where it goes slowly from first part to further away from where it's closest to the blood vessels, or for where the gas is absorbing. The second thing that that Goldman talked about was parallel compartment models. So these would be where all of the compartments kind of absorb at the same time. We have fast compartments and slow compartments. We have parallel compartments that are interconnected, compartments where we have either fast or slow tissues that absorb into themselves and then push into the other ones. And then serial parallel compartments where we can get different gases or different tissues diffused at different times, faster to slower, from one to another. And as you can tell, this is, even as I did the research on this is a very confusing, hard way to think about it. And so it took me a long time to even figure out what he's talking about. And I know I haven't really explained it well, because I don't know that I understand 100% how he made this model work and how this works for us as divers. Probably if you got into an extreme physiology standpoint, this would make a lot of sense. But I think the closest to what we have, or the best system we have to talk about decompression modeling and saturation, desaturation model, is the Bowman ZH16 compartment. As we talked about a little bit in our last class, we have different compartments. Now we've broken one up into 1A and 1B that doesn't show on this. But this is a fairly simple explanation of what each compartment does. We talked a little bit about half times of the nitrogen. As you can see from the model, each compartment has a compartment number, the half time, and this is from the time it would take from complete saturation to half desaturated, compartment one. So we see that there's some fairly short half times and short saturation times, 24 minutes. So a dive as short as 24 minutes, you're going to get complete saturation into those tissues. Those are also the ones that desaturate the quickest. So that kind of, I guess, interconnects. It absorbs it a lot faster, it'll also desaturate a lot faster. We can see down that some of our compartments, I guess I was reading that as minutes. Those are actually seconds. So 24 seconds. Am I reading that right, or is that hours and minutes? Maybe I'm wrong. Does anyone know?
Looks like hours and minutes.
Hours and minutes. Yeah. So compartment 16, or the slowest compartments, could be as much as 63 hours to be fully saturated. Probably not something we're going to get into unless you're doing saturation diving or long diving. The reason that these models are important to us as divers is we need to know what our body is doing so that we know how to accurately plan a dive to remove these inert gases that can cause issues in our bodies. So we can see these. This chart is basically what most dive computer algorithms are based off of. And I think we brought this up a little bit in class, was which tissue compartment controls based on which one is completely saturated and the half time it takes to get to half saturation. We could be completely saturated in compartment 9 or even 6, but not be anywhere near completely saturated in compartment 16, or tissues that are in compartment 16. And so our computer will base our decompression obligations off of whatever controlling tissue it is. That could be compartment 4 or 5 even at slower, at lower dives or shallower dive depths. So the reason we need to understand this is because as we dive, we saturate our tissue based on the atmospheric pressure around us. If we go to 100 feet or 99 feet, that's 3 extra atmospheres of pressure. Now we're on-gassing nitrogen at a higher rate than we would at sea level or even 33 or 66 feet. We continue to increase the saturation of our tissue. We, I guess, mitigate this by doing a few things. One would be shorter dives, longer decompression times. The other thing we could get into is trimix diving, where we substitute helium for the nitrogen, as well as nitrox, where we substitute some of that as oxygen to help. We run into problems with oxygen toxicity as we're on gassing. I know, I can't remember who brought it up, but somewhere in our class, whether it was this one or another one, someone was asking how we could be at over 1.6 partial pressure of oxygen and still be healthy for our body. But that was that isobaric decompression where we're actually using the higher partial pressure of oxygen to displace the nitrogen. And because we're actually off gassing, not on gassing nitrogen, it's not building up an oxygen toxicity in our bodies. So decompression models in practice, this is where it kind of gets, I found this next model very interesting as a good graphic to deter or to show you graphically what's happening in our bodies. So as you can see on the left, that's the inert gas tension in bar. Is a runtime in minutes on the bottom. This, and then meters of seawater on the right-hand side. So, or feet, if you look at the dotted lines. As you can see by the different lines, that's how fast or slow we get to our bottom depth. We can see that going straight to the bottom, straight to, say, it looks like about 150 feet or 45 meters. We go straight to on-gassing nitrogen at a fairly rapid rate, unless we switch to a trimix bottom gas. And you can see that the nitrogen on-gassing slows down almost to nothing, or almost vertically straight or horizontally straight across. Then once we start coming up from the dive or switching to different gases, you can see, and I'm colorblind, so I can't tell what that first color switch is, but switching to a 50% nitrox mix, how that inert gas tension drops because we've replaced the nitrogen with oxygen. The second color switch there is switched to 100% oxygen. And we can see that that continues to help off-gas the nitrogen or lower the inert gas tension in our bodies. And then as we switch to surface air, that all kind of evens itself out, whether it's slower or faster based on what we do with our dives. And the different lines indicate different dive profiles where they've gone to either a shallower depth or gone to a deeper depth. Faster or slower determines how much of that nitrogen on gassing we have. I know this is a kind of a short presentation to present a ton of material. Like I said, I think I could teach a 10-hour class and not get through it all. Any questions so far on what we've talked about? It's a lot to go over.
Yeah, that's my biggest takeaway is you're scratching the surface and you're giving great details and talking about things in depth. There's just so much there that, like you said, you can take a 10, 12-hour class, no problem.
Okay, so John, is this making sense to you?
It does make sense, but there is one place where you suggested that isobaric decompression does not build up O2 tox. And I think that O2 tox values still accumulate according to the NOAA tables, whether or not you're decompressing. And so your statement there, I think, is a little dangerous.
Okay, maybe I misspoke. I would say it doesn't build up as fast as we're off-gassing, especially if we include...
I think they're two separate things, and that's what kind of gets us into trouble sometimes, right? The off-gassing is just based on the gas gradients, both inside and outside the tissues. And it's the gradient of the inert gas that kind of guides the speed. The O2 tox, though, builds up according to the table because you still have the exposure to the high number of oxygen molecules.
Okay.
So keep them separate. Otherwise, we conflate them. And as Ivan will tell you, the throwaway sentences sometimes do you in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate the feedback on that. I guess as I was reading through it, a lot of studies had shown that using oxygen to displace the inert gases helped reduce the onboarding of nitrogen. But yeah, we still have to be cognizant of the oxygen toxicity.
Yeah.
But I see so what I had read is that moving up in the water column and increasing the oxygen as we use it to reduce our nitrogen loading, as long as we stay under the NOAA tables. Okay. Yep. I appreciate that feedback.
You good, Aaron?
Yep.
Perfect. John stole my thunder on the first one, but you asked him directly as well.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one I was the most concerned about, is talking about the one going over a 1.6 or getting to that point. Those are very different ideas.
Yep.
Utilizing oxygen toxicity and the buildup thereof. Remember, it's cumulative.
Yep.
So it's definitely but John did a very good job of that as well. Just realize what ends up happening. Kind of the interesting portion is the body as it goes through the alveoli, because of the hemoglobin barrier, is only going to be taking so much oxygen in, right? It only can take in a partial pressure of 0.10 oxygen into the system. And as it gets into the venous system, it actually cuts that back to 0.5. What ends up happening when you start going into those high partial pressures, that 1.6, 1.4 at that point, and why we have that limiter, is it does a damage to the nervous system, as well as to the gap between and the ability of the alveoli to actually do what they're supposed to be able to do. They can only do so much. What ends up happening is you're getting that hard partial pressure, is there's just less nitrogen being exchanged into the system, because the nitrogen can pass the barrier. So that's your big thing. So I encourage you to go back and take a little bit of study time to look at the hemoglobin barrier and how oxygen passes into the system, passes out of the system. I've got a great medical article I'd be happy to send the group as well on that. It's crazy interesting. I'll be honest, it took me 2 times to get through it, but it was definitely interesting as well. I think I liked your presentation. I would encourage you guys on these presentations is focus in on a smaller piece of it. Each one of these topics of subjects is a very large piece. Find one piece of that and focus on that. Get more granular. That's really how tech diving works as well, is you want to get granular on each idea and each thought process, right? I want to get granular in and make sure that I'm using the right amount of gas, and I got to get to this point. What are my cylinders holding? And so these are all kind of lessons of tech diving, and that we want to get in and get to the point where we understand one part of this really well, and I can explain it out. Because if I can't explain it simply, I don't understand it myself, right? A little bit of homework for you. Aaron, you started getting into isobaric counter diffusion. I'd like you to go home you are home. While you're at home, I'd like you to look up and do a little study for me, so that you understand what the difference between isobaric, isometric, and equimolar counter diffusion are. There's a difference between them, but they all have a distinct relationship one to another as well. You'll find a lot of that relationship when you do your studying has to do with trimix. So understand what that is and how that works and what the progression there is of. So isobaric, isometric, equimolar. Make sense?
Yep.
I wrote it down as well, just so I could remember to, if I needed to email it to you. I've got it on the side of my computer over here. So if I needed to remember to email it to you, I could, and you could write that down. So I'd like you to look those 3 up and give me just an understanding of the difference, because that's where you're heading, and that's it's definitely going to be to your interesting to know. One of the interesting things I will, this is my slight plug for today. You guys all know I'm testing out the new Apex DSX. Interesting enough, it does have an isometric alarm. I thought that was very interesting. So it'd be interesting for you to figure out why I would want an isometric alarm. So it has the hint is trimix. The hint is.
Yeah.
So there you go. Other than that, you did a good job. I would have liked to seen an overview at the beginning of what I was going to hear, so I could look for those key points. And I'd like to see a few questions throughout to test knowledge throughout the process, to make sure that this wasn't going over anybody's head. Hey, Bryce, what are you seeing here? Ivan, what do you think about this? So get in and ask some basic questions. And then you brought up one really quickly. I would have liked to have heard your description of why. And you said smoking specifically reduces your body's ability to uptake gases, exchange gases. And then you ripped off it right quick. So you brought up several interesting points that would have definitely been things that we could have applied to us and understand. And I don't think anybody here smokes. Dustin smokes. But there's people out there who smoke. Why do we want to know that? Why would that affect, and how does that affect? So try and you guys want to try and find key pieces of these presentations that have to do with the audience that you're working with, right? If I'm out of my daily life and I'm trying to present something to an automotive dealer, I certainly don't talk about tractors or RVs or motorcycles, right? I talk about motorcycles or cars, right? I talk about what. Yeah, John's laughing at me, of course. Yeah, I talk about what's pertinent to them, right? In this class, we don't talk about skydiving; we talk about scuba. So we try and find those things that we're interested within and have pertinent information too. I think you did a good job, though. I think you're heading the right direction, having a big information. And just to reiterate, make sure we stay on the safety topics as well, because it's very easy to say little things that become big things. Perfect example, our science and diving student that got from the conversation from the medical MD that you use a needle to get rid of AGE. Yes, John, we had a student in science and diving that he took away from the conversation of metacymal emphysema, subcutaneous emphysema, what was pneumothorax and arterial gas embolism. That with an arterial gas embolism, you have to crack the chest with a needle.
Interesting.
That's what he. And that's not what was said. The presentation was given by an MD surgeon who was talking about metacymal emphysema, right? And that's what he got from us. So you got to be very careful, because little things, even if it's said correctly, if it goes too far, it can definitely be uptaken incorrectly very, very easily. So you got to be very careful in your terms to make sure that they're simple enough that a third grader can get them. Cool. Good job, guys. Do you need those terms again, or you need me to email them to you over to you, Aaron?
I wrote them down. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Who is ready for their presentation? Bryce, how you doing?
Do mine, but...
We're sticking together. So,
Yeah,
Bryce,
I can do it.
you're talking DCS today.
Yep. So I didn't know that we could share our computers, so I don't have a fancy PowerPoint.
You
I
could
just
draw a
got-
picture for me.
Notes.
You're good. Whenever you're
So,
ready.
so today I'm presenting decompression sickness. It's important that we understand the cause and side effects of decompression sickness so we can prevent and treat it if necessary. Decompression sickness occurs when dissolved gases, particularly nitrogen, comes out of the solution of our body's tissue and forms bubbles. These bubbles can lead to various symptoms and complications, some of which can be life-threatening. The primary cause of decompression sickness is the reduction in the surrounding pressure. For example, when diving, as you descend deeper into the water column, the increased pressure allows your body to absorb more nitrogen. However, when we ascend and you rise too quickly, the pressure can decrease rapidly, forming physical bubbles in your tissues. These bubbles can obstruct the blood flow, the damaged tissue, and cause a variety of symptoms. Initially, you may experience joint pain, fatigue, dizziness, and skin rashes, which are all common. In bad cases, you can have neurological symptoms that may affect the brain and spinal cord, causing paralysis. Something I found out interesting was that these symptoms can show up to 3 days after you dive. The risk factors for decompression sickness are numerous, but the depth and the duration of dive play a significant role. The deeper and longer, the greater the risk. Additionally, the ascent rate is critical. Ascending too fast without allowing for decompression stops or not following proper dive profiles significantly increase the risk of bubble formation. Repetitive diving without proper surface intervals also has heightened the risk. It is important to give the body enough time to eliminate the nitrogen absorbed during each dive. The following proper diving procedures, including safety stops, is crucial. Prevention is the key to decompression sickness. Proper training, following the safety guidelines, and equipment maintenance are essential. Taking the time for necessary decompression stops allows the body to off-gas the excess nitrogen and significantly reduces the risk. In the event that a decompression sickness occurs, quick medical attention is crucial. The standard treatment is to provide pure oxygen to help eliminate nitrogen from the body. Additionally, you want to monitor for the ABCs in first aid and contact professional medical help for further treatment. Are there any questions up to this point?
None yet.
Not yet.
If you'd like to learn more about decompression sickness, I'd encourage you to take the Science of Diving class, which Ben here teaches so well. I've seen him on YouTube. In conclusion, understanding decompression sickness causes, symptoms, and treatment strategies is essential for anyone engaged in diving activities. By following procedures, watching your ascent rates, and taking necessary precautions, diving can remain a safe, fun sport. And I'm done.
Thank you.
Looking good.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm working to get unmuted. I was looking for a presentation that was emailed to me. My email is still flowing in. I didn't receive it yet. I just checked my spam as well.
It should be on its way.
Okay. I will keep an eye out for it. I've got my during these presentations, I don't normally keep my email open. I usually close it out, so it's still flowing through. I'm still getting all the stuff about the Daybell case right now, so it's probably behind that.
Yeah.
But
So John, it's
Good
in the
job.
mail.
yeah. So Bryce, good job. Again, the big thing is one of the things I've discovered with divers is how you guys doing? Oh, great. Are you going to turn your air on? Oh, that's probably a good idea. So if I ask a diver, are you okay? A lot of times I get a flippant answer, right? I get this, that, or the other. I get a very basic answer. But if I go into more detail and I'm very direct, Bryce, what did you learn about DCS? I get a more direct answer. So on your guys' dives, I encourage you to be, and that's really one of the reasons I do these presentations for two reasons. The first one is to help you understand the knowledge, because if you can teach it, you get it, right? The second one is it kind of teaches you guys a little bit about the process, in my opinion, at least tech diving. And maybe I'm just making too loose a correlation between the two. I don't think I am, though. As I want to give you guys a little bit of idea, kind of what it looks like when I go diving and I start doing these big dives. I really dig into it in a deeper way to understand. I just had two divers on Saturday that I was working with. One of them I brought up to Dive Master, so I don't worry too much about him because I brought him all the way from open water certification to Dive Master. So I think he's got a pretty good understanding of how I dive, and I know exactly how he dives because I'm pretty much out of the 100 dives he has, I probably have 97 of them with him, right? Kind of deal. So I get it. But the other guy, I make sure to ask direct questions. Here's where we at. What's going on? Here's this. And instead of, hey, are you okay? Because Aaron knows for sure, one of the divers that went with me this weekend. Aaron, would you say that's pretty fair that if I asked the other diver that we both know that's trying to become side mount, hey, how you feeling on that?
I don't know that he'd even answer. He'd be just like, I don't know.
Yeah. But if I ask, hey, where's your rating at, buddy? Okay,
Yeah.
well, where did you put your weights? Very direct questions. What did you get from this? How are you balancing? Did you notice that your bungee is off? Very direct
Yes.
questions. I want you guys to get used to that in your these presentations, as well as when you go out diving. A direct question about something will definitely yield a better response than, "Hey, y'all okay? 2 thumbs up, buddy." The grunt, right? So we want to make sure everything is very direct. We don't have a huge margin for error with what we're doing. So we're going down, we're getting in these deco. What is your plan, Bryce? Today's dive is this. What is your plan for this? Right? Ivan, what gas are you running for your deco mix? Everything's got to be direct questions. If you leave it to the, does everybody understand? Does anybody got questions? Very rarely you're going to get a question, right? We're all in that dive boat. We're all got the big egos or are a little nervous or whatever that is. So make sure you ask those direct questions. Make sure at the beginning of these presentations, go through those 3 things we talked about. Make sure we're talking about the 3 keys of what are we talking about? The defined, measurable objective. Today's objective is this. What are we doing today? So when we go out to the lake, the defined, measurable objective. Today's objective, dive 1, is to go to 60 feet for 15 minutes. That is the objective of today's dive. We're going to be doing a training dive with this, and we're going to be going through these skills. There will be some surprises on your guys' dives. I'm not going to kid you for a second on that. But for the most part, I will tell you 90% of what we're going to do. And the other 10% I don't tell you is stuff that you should know. And it has to do with the other 90%. You just get surprised when it happens. That's the big surprise for me. I like to call them bang drills. Bang. That happened, right? Explain the value of the topic. Hey, the value of this is this. This is why we're doing this. We're doing training dives today because of this. The overview. Overall, our goal is to get up to 60 feet. We're going to stay there at bottom time. We're going to stay there for 15 minutes. Run time will be 18 minutes when we leave the bottom. The overall. When we come up to 20 feet, we're going to switch over to a deco blend. It's going to be a simulator, whatever it is. Man, get used to getting those 3 things because it's part of your dive plan as well. Right? As you're making that dive idea and dive plan. Anybody ever dive with a 19-year-old 50-pound dive master in some foreign land or even stateside? John, how much trust do you have in a 19-year-old 50-pound dive master?
About the same as I have on any dive master that I've never dove with before, which is very close to that.
Exactly. So I treat everybody as if they're fresh out of open water unless I know different or they can prove differently to me. If I'm the dive master, I heard this is my new line for today. I heard it yesterday or today. I'm trying to remember who said it. Oh, it was yesterday. I was talking to Davide. He's an Italian diver who just broke the distance record in cave diving. And his word is when he's the dive master, he says, "You pay me for me not to trust you. That's why you have a dive master. You pay me not to trust you, to make sure you come back alive. So I don't trust you. And if I trust you, you go off and do your own damn thing. That's fine. It's no big deal. But if I don't trust you, I'm going to be watching you to make sure everything's good to go." So think about these kind of things that I don't trust anybody until they prove me differently. Even then I still question. I trust everybody but me and John. And John, I wonder about some days, but yeah. That's what my grandma used to say. I trust everybody, but I don't trust anybody but me and John. And I don't know about John most of the time. So there we go. But that's what I'm looking
we
for.
trust. All others show their work.
Exactly. Trust in God. All others pay cash.
Exactly.
That's what my dad used to say. Perfect. Well, that's what I'm looking for, guys. I want you to start getting the habit of this and understanding. It's twofold. A, I want you to understand the subject. But B, I want you to understand that this is how this works in diving as well. Objectives, value of this, the overview of what we're doing. If you can get those 3 things, that's most of a dive plan right there. And don't trust anybody unless I don't even, the joke is Nikki and I have a joke and you can ask her, who analyzes Nikki's tanks? Nikki, because Nikki doesn't trust me. Who analyzes Benjamin's tanks? Benjamin, because I don't trust Nikki. So, and Nikki's my wife. She's got my life insurance, right? So anyway, so interesting, fun story for you guys. I was in a boat in November, and it was the only boat I could get out. It was after a hurricane. It was just cheap recreational boat. They were doing a 60-foot reef dive, super easy. Ordered up my nitrox. They threw my mine and Nikki's steel tanks on the boat, and I walked on while they put it on. I says, I need to analyze those. And he says, why do you need to analyze that? I says, because it's nitrox. He says, well, I filled them. And I says, that's great. I still need to analyze them. But I'm a retired firefighter. That's great. I still need to analyze them. You don't trust me? No, not really. But I'm a retired firefighter. Good for you. I thank you for your service. I'm retired Marine Corps. I'm sorry. I don't trust you. I don't know you. So, trust in God, all others pay cash is what my dad would say. So who's ready for their presentation? We got 3 down. Sorry. Let's see. I'll check to see if John's presentation came in. I don't.
It's still in the mail.
Still in the mail. I do not see it.
Give somebody else an opportunity. I'm driving, and I'll be home in 10, and then I'll just run my own.
Perfect. Sounds good. I just got a text message from Donnie. Here soon. Got tired of giving up. Got tied up giving a police report. Donnie was giving a police report. So Donnie's going to jail. He'll be giving his from detention. So just kidding. I doubt that highly. Perfect. Well, I'll tell you what. I will go. Where's Ivan at? Are you still driving too, Ivan? Ivan?
Probably.
Chunk? He came up with that name for himself all on his own.
He gave himself a nickname.
He gave himself his own nickname. All right. Well, I'll just jump right into it. And since Chunk is driving, John's driving, Donnie's in the backseat of a police car. So I'm sure there's a story there. I don't know that he said he's giving a report to the police. So share. Let's take a look here. So I tell you what, I'm going to minimize this and let's do a little looky-loo at this. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to cancel this. And this is what subsurface looks like when your screen is not sharing correctly. Let's see, screen share, window, subsurface, bam. All right, so this is what subsurface looks like when you first open subsurface, right? Overall. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go over to log, plan dive. And why did it go away? That is a good question. There we go. Sorry about that. Let's see. Log, plan dive. There we go. Okay. Let me present my screen again. For some reason, I accidentally hit close. I'm sorry. I'm apparently computer retarded today. There we go. Okay. So we've got into plan dive. I like this one because it's very, very visual. It gives us everything in a very visual format as well as a physical format. So the first things we want to do is as we start to look at this, I'm going to maximize the screen so it makes it a little easier for you all to see. There we go. That way I can also lean back in my chair and I can feel cool leaning back in my new chair that my wife built for me today. So as we look at this, we've got a couple areas to be aware of. First off is going to be altitude. We can pop in the altitude. We know Bear Lake is about 6,000 feet. It's 5,924, but I'm going to round up to 6,000 for simplicity of use today. And to add a little safety margin as well. The second thing we're going to look at as well is making sure we're diving freshwater or what we're diving. We've got that over here. So that's pretty much what goes at the top here. The next piece over, our dives are going to be at, let's see, gradient factor low is going to be 25 and 50. So we can set our gradient factors as well. You can set in your deco or your sac rates as well. I don't trust the sac rates of this. They're just enough off that it bugs me. So I do my own sac rate calculations. I feel like they're better. Once we have the basic settings put in here, we're able to make some basic ideas. By the way, we're always going to use Bullman. Oh, there we go. Ivan is back. And so we're going to always use Bullman. So we start up here in the top and we can say, okay, what are we using for gas? If we're using 80 cubic foot, so we're using 2 of them, let's go ahead and put in 22.2 liters. That's how many liters we have at a total of 3,000 PSI. In running side mount, there's not really a good dive planning software out there that runs side mount, okay? So what you have to do is choose. And you run it as if you're running a twin set. So we put in the total amount of liters we have available to us in side mount. Okay, you can put this in as 160 cubic feet or 22.2 liters. I prefer to use liters. 3,000 PSI. What's our gas mix? 21%. What's our helium mix? 0. You guys are not ready for helium. Simple enough. There's our first tank. If we want to add another tank, there's a plus symbol up here. Next part, we're going to come down and we're going to figure out what's our final depth on descent. So the first dive we're going to do, it's going to be 60 feet. We're going to remain at 60 feet. And how long are we staying down on that first dive, guys? Who's got the dive plan handy? By the way, I was a little mean to you guys. Did you guys get the idea that I wanted you guys to think on your feet?
Yep.
Okay. So dive plan is going to be, dive 1 is 15 minutes according to the dive plan. So as we look at this really quickly, we start getting a real quick visual representation of what our dive is going to look like. Now, the first thing you might notice in this is that the line is orange. These are all color coded, just like red means stop, green means good to go. Are we going to be able to dive directly to 60 feet in 1 minute?
No.
No. That is asking for a whole, anybody, that has ever drove a reservoir knows you're not diving to 60 feet in a minute anyway. You're just going to take you a minute to swim out there. So let's go ahead and give ourselves 3 minutes to swim out there. And as you notice, the line turned green. Easy enough? So now we have we're back to having a good, strong visual representation. Now, be aware, this is in technical mode. Technical mode means that safety stop is on you. It'll figure out your deco. That's all it's here to do, is figure out your time and your deco. Everything else is on you. So if this was set up in recreational or in the way we'd normally dive it, gradient factor low would be 50, 85. You can see that it says, just go to the surface. You're good. Your gradient factor is low enough. We don't care. So just be aware that that's how it looks at it, is safety. Your extra safety stop is completely on you. So let's put this back to 25, 50. You might have noticed something here. Anybody notice something that happened, the difference between when we were into an actual gradient factor that would be safe for us versus the safety factor that I'm putting on you guys? Would you guys notice the difference between those two are? Would you like me to take it back and show you again?
Yes, please.
Okay. I normally dive a 50-85. There's a 50-85. That's a pretty, you guys will most likely dive start at a 50-80. That's a typical start at. But even at my gradient factor, that's what it looks like. Here's a gradient factor I'm asking you guys to run. 25, 50. Notice the difference?
Yeah, I noticed the difference. At 20 feet, at 20 feet, you have some, I'm going to say deco time or off-gassing time.
Yep, deco time. Absolutely. And that's all going to be represented right over here. This is our dive plan. We can certainly click on it and make it verbatim. I think it's certainly fine as it is. We're going to descend to 60 feet. It's going to take us 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, we're going to hit our bottom time. At 60 feet, we're going to stay there for 15 minutes. At 18 minutes, we're leaving the bottom, the run time. We're going to ascend for 1 minute to 20 feet. A little bit of a fast ascent, but not too bad. So at the 19-minute mark, we're going to arrive at our deco stop. Once we're at our deco stop of 20 feet, we're going to remain there for 4 minutes. We're going to leave our deco stop at 23 minutes, and we can go ahead and ascend at that point. But what it's telling you right here is that you have a required deco stop. Because if you notice in our dive plan, we didn't put in a deco stop. All we said is, I want to go to 60 feet and stay there for 15 minutes. That's all we've told it. It says, wait a minute, based upon my gradient factor, my limiting safety factor that I've created, now all of a sudden I have to stop somewhere and increase my dive plan. Now let's take a look at that for just a moment. What happens if we go to 50 minutes? Right? 40 minutes. 30 minutes. Look how long our deco time is at that conservative rate of, I mean, we're literally 86 minutes of dive time now. And the reason being is we're coming up and we're spending 51 minutes in deco based upon the gradient factor we've built. Okay. Does that make sense?
So
Bryce?
far.
Are you getting this, Bryce?
Yeah.
Okay. Simple enough. I just want you guys to notice a few things in here. So this is your dive plan number 1. But now the magic thing is we want to discover, well, wait a minute, Benjamin, I thought we were going to do a deco blend. Good question, Aaron. I'm glad you brought that up. So let's add another gas in here. So we click in over here. We're going to add a second gas, and we're going to, come on, there it goes. Click in here, and I'm going to use that on an aluminum 40, which is 5.5 liters. I'm going to use a 40% deco blend. All of a sudden, I have a lesser amount of time, right? So I went from 24 minutes to 22 minutes by using a 40% deco blend. And it even tells you, here's what you can do. Here's where it's going to be. I can limit the bottom pressure or my deco right here. I can change that. And what that'll do is literally increase my safety factor, but it also raise the point where I'll switch over to my deco blend. So if I want to keep a limiting factor of 1.1 on my deco and my bottom partial pressure, here's where I'll switch. Okay. So I can control that completely. Easy enough, right? So we'll set a limiting factor for 1.1 because this is really a pretty mild plan. That's how you do it. Now, one of the questions that I would ask myself, and that Dustin and I talked for a little bit. There we go. Add John back to the mix.
Yep.
One of the questions that I would ask is, if I build a dive plan, should I build, this is my question to the group. In fact, I'm just going to ask Aaron, if I build a dive plan, which dive plan should I build first? The one I want to do or my contingent? Worst case scenario.
The one you want to do.
Why would you build the one you want to do versus your worst case scenario dive plan?
We'll see if you've got any room for error, or if you need to increase the conservativeness of your dive plan.
See, that's the reason that I would do my bailout plan first.
Exactly. Ding, 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 ding. Thank you, John. And that's exactly right. I think Dustin would agree with that.
Right. Yep.
Build your worst case scenario first, because if you can't do your worst case scenario, you can't do your best case scenario, right? And the problem is what ends up happening. It's one of my favorite things to do in this class is let you guys go ahead and build out your dive plans from best case scenario to worst case scenario, because I promise you, within the dive plans I've given you guys, when you see the corrected ones, there's going to be a dive plan that's not going to work. You're going to have to say, wait a minute, I can't carry that much gas and that much deco, so I'm going to have to make a correction. If you can't carry the gas, you can't correct the gas, you can't carry enough gas, then you for your emergency, then you can't do your primary, because we have to plan for the emergency first. So in your guys' dive planning, I want you guys to think worst case scenario first. If I can't do the worst case scenario, then I can't do the best case scenario. Does that make sense?
Yep.
We don't use seatbelts, but until the crash happens, right? But we plan to have seatbelts in case we have that crash. We don't get into a car unless we can have seatbelts. We'll always plan for the worst case scenario. Nobody likes seatbelts. I mean, John and I grew up in the day and age when they didn't even have car seats, right? But admit it, John, you didn't ride in a car seat when you were a kid.
Nope.
It's okay. So, in fact, I got stitches on my head from when I was 4, riding in the front seat of my grandma's car, and she went over a big bump and it knocked her off the side of the road, and I ended up hitting something. No airbags, no
Lanes
seatbelt,
so
no
much.
car seat. Wham! It happens, right? That's why we plan for the worst case scenario first. So as you guys plan this out, think worst case first, then think best case, right? We certainly want the best things to happen. You know what they say, plan for the worst, hope for the best. So plan for the worst on this. So my suggestion to you guys is we look at this. What happens if I stay for 10 feet deeper and 10 minutes longer? Whoop. Add that other 10 feet. All of a sudden, now my dive plan becomes substantially different, doesn't it? Look how much more deco time I've got. I went
Yes.
from 4 minutes to 16 minutes of deco. Can I carry enough gas for a 48-minute dive on this dive plan?
According to your calculations there, according to its calculations, yeah, you're just above minimum gas, I think.
Yep.
But is there any more scroll down for your EAN 40? Yeah, it looks like that's okay too.
So can I do this dive?
Yeah.
This is worst case scenario. If my plan is to do a 15-minute dive to 60 feet, can I do the dive? Dustin, what do you think?
I was just going to run over to your spreadsheet and check that. Give me 2 minutes. Because when we ran through some of the scenarios last time, it was close, and some of our add 10 plus 10 just put us over the edge.
Yep. So let's look at that. Let's go ahead and plug this worst case scenario in. If we had 70 feet and we were doing, how long are we at 70 feet? We're at 70 feet for, let's just
29
add it out. 3 minutes plus 25 is 28 minutes plus a minute of ascent time to get to here. So that's 29 minutes of bottom time at 70 feet. And then we're going to do 30 feet on this particular one is what we're showing because I've limited down the partial pressure of that. So 30 feet, we're ascending there for 1 minute. That's 30 minutes. And then we're switching to our next gas. Our next gas is going to be 30 feet for 40%. How long are we there at 30 feet? We're there at 30 feet for 2 minutes. And then we're at 20 feet for how long? 16, 17 minutes. Okay. Let's move this out of the way. So let's look at our gas. I'm going to close out my email, John. I'm going to stop looking for that. And I'm going to reshare my screen. Present. Share screen. And I'll show you how I use this. You can use this if you'd like. This is what I do. So in our dive plan, we talked about 10 feet deeper. So 70 feet for 29 minutes at 21% oxygen. Oop. I apologize. I need to take that helium out. Zero helium on a 22-liter tank with 3,000 PSI. So according to this, we're going to run out of gas at a 16. Oh, I'm sorry. I figured out why. There we go. There we go. Sorry, I missed the work factor. We're going to go through this work factor here in a little bit. We're going to get down pretty close to our minimum amount of gas. We're going to have 825 PSI left on this overall gas. But it's going to go to the next level. And our deco gas, we're going to use almost half of it. So we can go down here and we can say on gas 1, right here, at 16 liters per minute SAC rate, that we're going to require 3,298 liters. Our total tank size is 4,550 liters. So we're definitely getting really dang close. Our 2/3 gas mix, if we use rule of thirds, is 3,000. So we're going slightly below our rule of thirds. We're going 300 liters below our rule of thirds right there. So that's how I use this spreadsheet. I created this myself. It's not as sexy and pretty as a lot, but it definitely covers most of the math for you. The other things we can look at as well, our partial pressure is set to, we're not getting above 0.76. Our equivalent narcotic depth is at 25.5 meters or 84 feet. So those are some precluding factors as well. So this spreadsheet will give you every piece of it in metric and imperial.
So if you put the same SAC rate from the spreadsheet into subsurface, how close is it on the gas?
It's close, but not as close as I would like it to be. So it bothers me when it's off like that. Let's see. I'm trying to pull a subsurface up right now. Give me a second, so we can look at them side by side. Let's see here. Give me a second. I'm trying to get them in the same screen so you guys can see them together. Almost there. All right, share screen again. Present. Come on, present. Share screen. Entire screen. There we go. So subsurface is saying that we're going to be at 2170 psi. I'm saying substantially less than that. We've got them both set to 15 ps or 15 liters per minute.
Well, yeah, but look at just the volumes that it says on the plan at the bottom. So yeah, it says your gas consumption is like 1,200 liters, and then 388 liters. And that feels like a substantial difference.
It is a substantial difference. It's one of the reasons that bothers me. That's why I started using the spreadsheet, because I didn't trust what it was coming up with, because I know it's not accurate. So that's why I do this and do it by hand, because I don't. I like Deco Planner, but I don't like Deco Planner. There's a software out there you can buy called Deco Planner. I don't like it that it's not visual, but when it comes up to Deco times, they come up exactly the same. Deco Planner works, has better SAC rate calculation in it, but I still find it to be off as well. So I'd rather do my own math to make sure I'm accurate. So that's why I use the spreadsheet. It bugs me that it's not accurate, because the math is pretty simple, and at least in my opinion. So that's why we do it. So overall, that's how the Deco Planner works. It works off the Bowman algorithm. Its SAC rate calculations, I feel, are significantly enough off that it'll come out close sometimes, and it'll come off way off in others. And this one's definitely a good example of way off. So I don't tend to look at this overall. And it's, here's our SAC factor as well. I think that variance is in SAC factor. I think we figure SAC factor differently, but it's still off enough. But the good news is the Deco times work out. I've used 3 different computers on this, and the Deco times are nice. Plus, I like that it's very simple to take a look at it. You can get an idea where you're at in the gradient factor, your surface GF throughout the process, and you're able to dig through it more accurately. So, but that's how you use this. That's how I do it. You are certainly welcome after this class to go to Multi-Deco. Sorry, I was called a Deco Planner. It's called Multi-Deco. I apologize. I think it's $30 if I remember correctly. It's been a while. I can't find my license for it to buy it again, and I don't like having to. I figure you guys have already spent a crap load of money on trying to get into this course and gear and everything else. I hate saying, hey, by the way, you need to buy this other thing, and you need to buy this other thing. So it bothers the crap out of me to even suggest you guys buying anything more. So this is a nice free solution. It works. It may be not as elegant as some, but this is what I do. So, and it's worked really well. I've never, ever had a problem. But that's how we do it. Go ahead.
So this is Dave. So you recommend, if we don't want to use the software you're showing, to use Multi-Deco?
Multi-Deco works good. I've liked it. it's not as visual as this. I like the visualness of this
Okay.
because you can literally go in and say, okay, what happens if I do this? I want to do 270 foot dive or whatever. You can start pulling things around and you can start playing with your dive more directly like this. So you can start getting an idea where I'm at and what's going on and what I have ability to do.
Okay.
So and I really like that idea, and it makes changes throughout the process.
Okay.
So I like this as a very simple program. It works very well. It does a good job. So
I've been playing around with Dive Planner as well, if you've ever messed with that.
sure.
Okay.
Go. I played with it a little bit. Let's see, 4 minutes. 15. Overall, the moral of the story today is I want you guys to, gosh, I can't, there we go. Can't type today for some reason. I want you guys to start getting the idea of how to use this basic planner. It works well. It does what it's supposed to be doing. And this is what we'll use. But if you find another dive planner, check it against this and check it against actually going into your computer and using the dive planning software within your computer as well. Because all the computers that I'm suggesting have dive planners built into them. And Ivan, I have not used Baltic before. I'm not familiar with that one, so I can't speak one way or the other about it.
I've got a couple of TDI friends that use Baltic and swear by it. I've played with it. It comes up with the same numbers that Subsurface does.
Cool. Most of the good news is the algorithm is the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
The only variance that you'll find between computers that are technical quoted, the DSX, the Garmin, and the Shearwater, is the accuracy of the pressure sensor within.
Mm-hmm.
I had an interesting weekend where I took all three of the computers. I put a video camera in front of them and took them all out to 110 feet and went ahead and stayed out long enough to crack DECO. They went to DECO at different times, but pretty close to each other. The variance was the depth. And the variance in depth, I firmly believe, has to do with the accuracy and the sensitivity of the barometric pressure chip within each. That's the pressure, the difference. Other than that, my Garmin and my Shearwater I've consistently dove those together, and they go to DECO pretty close, usually within about 30 seconds of each other, sometimes a minute. And at that, I'm okay with that, a minute difference in starting DECO and ending DECO, because I just go with the more conservative computer. So that's my suggestion for you for the day. That's how that works. But I'd like to get kind of back up and kind of go through a few things. Let's see, chapter number 104. And then I'm going to go through a little bit of stuff. And actually, you know what? John's at home. So let's go ahead and let John take over for a little bit, because I'm going to cover his subject, or he's going to cover mine, one or the other.
Yeah, based on the fact that I've done a few of these in 5 to 8 minutes, makes me zero in. We're going to do something that's not really in your plan, but let's see if I can share my screen.
I look forward to it.
And I want to share the entire screen, and I think apparently, give me just a sec. I've got to let screen recording be on.
You're fine. Are you still covering equipment, or are you covering something different now, John?
I'm covering equipment. It's just going to be not, the mainline kind of a thing. Okay, so let's try this one more time. Window, there we go, share. All right, can you see anything on my screen or not?
Not yet. It'll show up at the bottom for me, and I'll be able to kick it over, add it too. I'm not seeing any share.
Yeah, give me just a moment to drop right back in. Apparently, Chrome needs to be able to share again.
Sounds good.
All right. Now let's see if it'll share the screen. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay. And audio is where it ought to be. And do you see a screen?
Not yet. John,
Okay, so present. Screen recordings allowed. Let's try it one more time.
it's interesting that your TDI friends are suggesting out something other than multi-deco, because multi-decos come the standard for a TDI.
Yeah.
Everybody that I know at the mothership at TDI pushes multi-deco like they're getting money for it. Oh, John's gone again.
Yeah, when you're present on here, there's a couple extra steps.
And so some of them I know are like, this one works really well. So all right. Still see anything or no?
That's the big negative on that, John. Sorry.
Golly. Back in a sec.
Okay.
It won't let me play in Safari, and it doesn't seem to want to let me present. So, entire screen, that one. Share. Chrome has lost its permission to capture your screen. To fix it, go to System Preferences, unlock the screen by clicking the lock in the bottom left corner.
You're the IT guy that told me that usually the problem is between the keyboard and the person and the whatever.
He had enough.
I'm glad the IT guy is the one having the problem.
I didn't have a problem.
I can't stream this at all from Chrome on my phone, so I have to use another browser.
Gotcha.
I always want to say it's the technology that's being used, but crazy.
So no matter how it slices, it was my fault. Oh, there we go.
Had to do this multiple times. So, all right. So tonight we're going to talk about tuning some of our tech equipment. And we can talk through some of the basics of equipment, but you're going to get that from Ben in a few minutes. And you've already gone through it in some of the online learning. So we're going to pick something that's just a little bit tangential, but very related to what we should do as a tech diver, which is planning our dive, diving our plan, and understanding how things are working. So think through, close your eyes, imagine you put on your tech gear, tanks, rates, WEGs, thermals, dry suit, yada, yada, yada. How much weight do you actually need? And how did you figure this out? Did you put it on, guess, and jump in the water? Or did you actually measure and do the math, right? We've been talking about this in the decompression part of it too, where we should analyze our gas. We should do the same thing for our weights and our gear to make sure that we have the right equipment. By properly preparing our equipment for our tech dives, we improve our our odds of surviving things going wrong. So our main points today, we're going to talk about selection of tanks, selections of BCD lift, and analyzing our weight needs. By the end of the presentation, you ought to be able to explain how to select cylinders that fit, select a BCD with proper lift, and minimize the weight required for a dive. If you like what you hear and you want to learn more about it, then I'm recommending 2 books, The 6 Skills by Steve Lewis and Fundamentals of Better Diving, published by GUE. So first off, picking tanks that fit. I'm 6 foot. I have about 28 inches from shoulder to seat. And so if I want a tank that fits comfortably, I need to find one that fits in that margin. So rather than just buying whatever the shop's got, I want to look up the spec for it. And so I have a bunch of Catalina S80s. And if I look at that little green arrow, it shows me that the length of the unit is just about 26 inches. And that means it's going to fit me just fine. I've also highlighted the 11.1, that's its rated volume and its pressure of 207 bars. So if I multiply those together, I can get how many liters are in the tank, and I can know what it is when it's full. So we'll go a little deeper on the volume bit in just a moment. I'm curious to know what my gas weighs. So if my cylinder has 11.1 volume and a full pressure of 207, that means it's got about 2,298 liters in it. Air weighs 1.29 grams per liter. That means a full tank has 2.96 kilos of air. But we're tech divers. We dive rules of third, and that means 2/3 of our gas is available, but 1/3 should stay in the tank just in case something bad happens. That means we have a shift of 1.95 kilos or 4.3 pounds from beginning to dive to end of dive. I dive 2 cylinders, so that gives me a potential gas swing of about 8.6 pounds during a dive. And I'm going to call that gas weight. So does that make sense what I did there for you guys? I multiplied out the volume of the tank times the pressure and then multiplied by how many grams per liter air weighs and picked up a number. Did you guys follow that? Ivan?
Yes, I did.
So our gas weight then is just how much the gas itself in our tank weighs. Next up, I want to know what my equipment weighs. So I'm going to take a digital scale. I'm going to hang my tanks while they're full, regulators BCD from the scale while they're in the water. And that's going to show me what the negative buoyancy of my equipment is in the water. I'm going to write that down and I'm going to call that my equipment weight. Does that make sense why I would do that in the water, you guys? Somebody tell me why.
Yeah, this is Dave. I think what you're getting at and what I'm understanding is that you need to figure out how much your weight is negatively buoyant so that you can calculate how much weight you're really going to need versus guessing.
That's where we're going. And exactly right. I want to know what the buoyancy of my equipment actually is, or its negative buoyancy. Next, I want to know how much my stuff weighs, because my stuff also adds something to this. So my 2 lights, my 2 reels, my 2 DSMBs, and any other stuff I'm going to drag along with me in the water. So remember, since we're tech divers, 2 is 1, 1 is none. We expect failures to happen and we need to be able to survive them. So we have doubles of most of these things. So I'm going to do the same thing. I bundle all of that stuff together, hang it off the scale in the water, and now I should know what my stuff weighs. All right, somebody else tell me why, as a tech diver, I might want to have 2 lights instead of just 1.
For redundancy, if one fails, you have a backup.
Yeah, I don't kill myself when one thing goes wrong. Exactly.
Great.
Next up is the one that I think we tend to forget is, what do I weigh? So I'm going to put on my dry suit thermals mask, empty the dry suit of air, walk into chest deep water, and hold just enough weight to sink past my nose with half a breath and my knees up to my chest. I'm going to write that down as the me weight. That's what it's going to take to sink me in the water. Do you guys follow that?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Okay. So let's take a brief left turn here for a moment. How much does a deep breath of air lift me? The adult male has a vital capacity of about 4 liters. Water weighs about 1 kilogram per liter. Therefore, a full breath should give me just about 4 kilos more buoyancy, or about 8 pounds of lift. So I find that to be super interesting, because at the end of the dive, I've lost just about 8 pounds of gas in my cylinders. But if I take a breath, that's going to give me yet another 8 pounds of lift. So, and I've said that kind of backwards from where I was originally thinking of going. I was thinking, you know, if I have 8 pounds of lead to counteract the loss of air at the end of a dive, and I have a BCD failure at the beginning of a dive while I'm still an extra 8 pounds heavy, a super deep breath is going to make me pretty close to neutral, and I can swim up a little bit. Just have to remember to keep my airway open. So I find that interesting. Now, to put it all together, this is kind of the meat of this stuff. If my equipment with my full tanks plus my stuff weighs more than me, then I'll sink at the front of the dive. That's good. I don't have to add extra weight. Except that I need to remember at the end of the dive, sometimes I've used a lot of air. If my equipment plus my stuff minus my gas measure is less than me, then I'm not going to be able to hold my safety stop, and I need to add weight. And I add only enough weight to the point that my equipment plus my stuff minus my gas weighs the same as me. And we'll call that new measure weight. So tell me, somebody, if I've added my equipment and my stuff and it happens to weigh more than me, why might I still want to understand what my gas weighs? Are you guys following?
Yeah, I'm following you. I was just giving other people a chance to respond.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
To answer your question, is you want to make sure that you're properly buoyant when you're doing your safety stop, so you're not fighting it.
Exactly. I want to be not fighting it. And ideally, I don't want to have very much air in my BCD at that point. Now, one of the things that I didn't really go over too much, and that's going to be on this next slide, is, well, maybe once I get to the next slide. Did my PowerPoint freeze? Lovely. Oh, there we go. If I take those measurements, equipment, stuff, and weight, that's the amount of lift that I need in a BCD. So my equipment is somewhat negative, my stuff is somewhat negative, and I've thrown on a whole lot of weight. If I add up all of those things, that should be how big the lift is in my wing, or at least close, right? I mean, this is a pretty broad overview, so there may be some fine details that you guys need to think through, but that gets me in the ballpark. That way I know, do I need a 20-pound wing, a 30-pound wing, a 40-pound wing, a 50-pound wing, a 60-pound wing? God hope I don't need a 120-pound wing or something like that. But, you know, this is how we can tell. We add our equipment and our stuff and our weight, and that generally should guide how much lift we need in a wing. Again, as tech divers, we do want to have redundancy, so dry suit or a second bladder or something. But if we've done this well, I'm going to be pretty close to neutral at the end of a dive, and I have enough capacity in my lungs that if I take a really deep breath, I can probably swim up, even if I've had a BCD failure. Oops. So if I've done this right, I have only enough weight to hold a safety stop at the end of the dive. The most negative I'll be during a dive is around 8.6 pounds, which is what the gas weighs. If my BCD fails at the beginning of the dive, I can take a deep breath and keep my airway open and swim up a little bit. And that's going to be pretty much neutral. So you should be able to do similar measurements with deco cylinders and get a complete picture and see how things might work. You can also run these numbers yourself and test them out in a pool. But here's my real world example for you. I was out in Hawaii. I dove an aluminum 80 with my Katana 2, a 3mm wetsuit, boots, 2 lights, 2 reels, and did a cenote dive. So my knee weight was only 2 because I'm fairly dense, as Ivan will tell you. My equipment weight is 2.6, my gas 4.3. Breath is the same for adult males, and my stuff weight about 2. And when I add all these things together, I should find that I need just about 1.7 pounds to sink me. And I ran 2 in the cenote and held my safety stop with no air in my wing. So it's really, really close. In salt water, if I did the same thing, I can sort of guess at the differences in the weight or the density of the water. You know, it's about 2.7% more buoyant. And if I add everything out of the water and multiply by that 2.7, it says I need another 8 pounds additional. And I dove a total of 10 in the ocean, and it was pretty good. So you can kind of get in the ballpark by multiplying what all of your stuff weighs out of the water by the difference in density, and you'll be in the ballpark. Again, it's better if we redo all the measurements just in the ocean before we go on a dive. We're tech divers, we should be able to do that. So somebody tell me how I measure my gas. What did I do?
You took the volume of gas in liters and took the grams per or weight per liter.
Uh-huh. And multiplied them all together, and it told me what my gas weighed. Okay.
Yep.
How did I measure me? Somebody else. Ivan, are you paying attention?
Yes, I am. You measured the me weight by, well, you included your dry suit, your undergarments and such, and you went into a shallow pool and saw how much it took to get you just neutral.
With a half a breath, yeah.
With it, yes.
How much lift does a full breath give me, Ben? Is Ben still there?
I
He's not
am
around.
still here. Sorry, I was taking some notes. A full breath gives you about 3 feet of lift.
About 8 pounds in mine, so 3 feet would be an interesting conversation for us to have.
Absolutely. I was guessing to be. I was guessing to be honest. I was taking notes on something else and preparing for the next portion. So
See, I know how this goes. That's why they ask me questions when I make people do this too, because I'm scoring them. And
Good
somebody
catch.
else, why do I need redundancy?
If something fails, you want to back up. The example you gave is 2. If you have 2 lights, 2 is 1, 1's none kind of situation.
Yeah. All right. Good job, guys. If you want to continue your education, come sign up for a Master Scuba Diver course from your local NAUI instructor, and you'll learn more about minimum gas planning and equipment selection, etc.
good job, John. I think you did a fantastic job. I appreciate you going through that as well. I apologize for squirreling on you. I will be honest. We have a really, I've told Ivan, but I don't want to say it over recording. We have a top-notch guest on our podcast tomorrow that is world class that you all will be substantial. Ivan, would you say that you were substantially impressed when you heard about tomorrow's guests? Did Ivan leave us again?
Ivan's texting me. He said I earned a 5.
Kind of breaking up.
There you go. Perfect. Ivan, were you impressed when you heard about tomorrow's guest?
Having a hard time hearing anything.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Give me.
Yeah, I
You're
can
still
hear you
breaking
just
up. I'm
fine.
sorry. What was that?
Fine.
Okay.
Sounds like Ivan's a little bit dicey connection.
Gotcha. Sounds good. When you guys find out who the interview is tomorrow, you will be really like, whoa. So
it's really breaking up. Can you say that one more time, please?
my question was, when you found, I'm not releasing the guest for tomorrow's show over recording, but were you pretty impressed when you found out who tomorrow's guest is?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So perfect.
is.
All right. We're going to go through about another half hour And I'm going to go through equipment really quickly. I think we've got a pretty good understanding of that as well. Question for you guys. Who is coming out Friday night? Who is coming out Saturday morning for our dive on over Memorial Day?
I should be out on Friday.
Excellent.
Yep.
I'll be out Friday night.
I'm sorry, Aaron, what'd you say?
I'll be there Friday day.
I thought you said Sunday night. I was like,
Yeah,
I thought he did too.
I'm coming for the fun dives. I'm skipping all the work.
okay. Oh, there. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So Aaron on Friday night. John Friday night.
Yeah.
Who else? Let's
Dustin
see.
Friday.
Dustin's Friday?
Yep.
All right. Dustin's Friday. And let's see. There was one other. Let's see. Justin. Who else? Let's see. Dave is not coming. Bryce, you weren't coming. Ivan, when are you coming?
Coming to where? I'm sorry. It's still like in and out here. Intermittent. What?
To Bear Lake.
To Bear Lake. I'm the 26th. The Friday through the Monday or Tuesday.
Awesome. So here's my suggestion. Everybody meet at our campsite at about 6 o'clock. Let's do some fire and s'mores, and we'll talk deco theory, and I'll pass out the deco plans. How's that sound for everybody?
Question there on those plan dives. I understand there's some inconsistencies in the numbers and stuff.
There he is. We're going to go through that here shortly.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely.
but the thing is it also had a third day of diving. So how many days of diving is there?
I'm planning on 2 days. If we need a third, I will be available for diving on Monday as well. So if you'd like to stick around for Monday, great. We can do all the dives we need on Saturday and Sunday. If there's an issue and we need more time, Nikki and I will be there. I'm trying to find May here on my calendar. We will be leaving Monday afternoon. So we are absolutely available. I'm absolutely available for Monday dives as well. So
Okay.
I will bring enough tanks. I planned on bringing my twin sets out. So I'll bring 8 side mount tanks for myself and probably at least one set of twins, if not 2, and probably a couple of single. So I should have plenty of gas. I'll better bring a shit ton of gas. So I should be good. I'll be good to go. And I might have enough extra for somebody else if they need it. But yeah, Monday's an option if you need it or just want to. It's fun dives. I like Bear Lake. So
Always like
perfect.
diving.
All right, we'll meet at our campsite on Friday night, and we'll do some s'mores, and we'll talk. We'll either talk shop or talk fun. I don't care which. I will probably do a little both, to be honest with you. To be frank with you. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump into it. I just was curious on that. I am diving this weekend. For Bryce, has your dry suit showed up, and the plans are showing up?
They asked me my address this morning, so that's not a good sign that it hasn't shipped.
Where's your dry suit coming from?
It's in Reno.
Well,
Well, that's not far away. That's
It's
good.
not
we'll
far.
cross our fingers and ask them for next day, right?
Yeah.
So Bryce, you might be joining me this weekend. I'm pretty sure Donnie is joining me this coming weekend as well. Anybody else that'd like to join? Just heads up on this weekend's dives. They will be tech natured, but this weekend is about relaxing and just getting comfortable in the dynamic of technical diving. We will probably do some skills, but I'm not working on. If at the end of the weekend, Bryce, if you have done all the skills and you hit through all the stuff and you look and you're comfortable doing it, there's a chance I'll sign you off. But if that's not the goal of the weekend. The goal of the weekend is just be comfortable, ask questions, get comfortable, do it right.
Okay.
It's like Fast and Furious 2. There's no Mr. Miyagi to this. You learn by doing, right? If you guys read Fast and Furious series, that's one of my favorite series. There's so many good quotes in part.
Hair off.
Yep. There's so many good quotes in season 2, Tokyo Drift. It's unbelievable. Han is a freaking genius, the Miyagi of his generation. But anyway, I digress. So this weekend we're doing some diving. I'll take all my tanks up. If you guys show up and would like to dive, please come. show up, dive, enjoy. We will be in the same campgrounds we're going to be in the following weekend. And everybody, I think everybody's seen my little blue truck. It's blue and black. So as you drive through the campgrounds, we'll probably head over to Cisco Beach around 9 a.m.
Yeah, it's just a
Still,
little truck.
it's still blue and black. Your truck. Hasn't
Yeah, my
changed?
little blue black truck. It's in my mini truck. So
Yeah.
my little power wagon. So look for that. We'll be there, and we'll be over Cisco Beach. So the big secret, by the way, guys, when you go to Cisco Beach, you're camping just south, and you've already paid for camping, and they won't hit you for charge for the. It's like $10 to get into Cisco Beach. Just tell them you're camping here, because if you're camping, you've already paid. No sense in paying that crap twice. So anyway, moral of the story.
Is that on the Utah side or the Idaho side, Cisco Beach?
It's on the Utah side.
Okay.
The good side.
It's on the crappy side. Utards.
Hey,
Hey. All right. Equipment for deck diving. So overall, we kind of get the idea. The idea of this object lesson is to identify the types of buoyancy compensators, BCs, and evaluate their sustainability for decompression diving. Now, I will be perfectly frank with you. I had to add the K2 in this for the presentation. I do have the BC on the right as well, just kind of an idea. So some of the basic ideas with deco diving is we need to make sure we have extra additional ability to carry crap overall. So as we look at the BC on our right, one of the first things we notice, and it's circled and highlighted there, is extra D-rings. And so in deco diving, we're starting to carry a lot more stuff, specifically deco gases. We need somewhere to hook those up and make sure that we're able to carry those kind of things. But there's a few other things that we need to carry. Bryce, what's something else that we're going to need to make sure we carry or have a way to carry while we're deco diving?
roll or spools and SMBs.
Absolutely. Dustin, why do you think we need an SMB while tech diving?
To go to the surface or mark from the surface in case you have to send messages up. It's easy to follow a line while you're doing your deco stop. Sit there and watch your reel.
Yep, that's absolutely one good reason. Another good reason, just kind of on a side note, is that while you are tech diving, you're going to be going to a much deeper depth. You're going to take longer to get up. So what you find is you're doing these longer times. It's going to be harder for the boat to find you because, as you all know, with the drift underwater, it doesn't always go the direction the boat thinks it's going to go. So having a way to mark and give you the boat plenty of time to find you is definitely to your advantage. So one of the things I want you guys to start getting the idea of, when do we launch our SMB, Ivan?
When do we launch our SMB?
When do we launch an SMB while tech diving?
I would say before you go up.
Yeah, when we start our ascent, when we've ended our bottom time phase and we're getting ready to start our ascent, we go ahead and launch our SMB then. The reason being is that gives us plenty of time to get to the surface and for us to utilize it as a visual reference, but it also gives plenty of time for the boat. In practicality, it's really nice to have the boat find us and take us home. I really like that part of the dive is when I get to come home and I don't have to swim to shore. So that's my being funny. You guys can laugh if you'd like. It does not get you extra points, unfortunately, but that's a big piece of it as well. But it gets tough. I mean, if you're doing a big dive, you're out, you're off the coast. I use Florida a lot because that's where I like to dive the most. You're out diving a big dive. You're diving when they call it hole in the wall or printing press. It's a beautiful 165-foot dive, right? As you go through the hole. But the problem is your first ceiling deco stop that you're going to hit is going to be about the 90-foot mark. So now all of a sudden you are now, if it's the viz is down where you only have 50 feet of viz, you've lost sight of mostly the bottom. You still can't quite see the surface. So you're in a kind of a visual, what's the word I'm looking for? A visual kind of
reference.
Limbo. Yeah, your visual limbo is what I
reference.
You have no way to visually reference. So having an SMB definitely is to your advantage on that. So you're carrying that kind of stuff. What other kind of things might I want to carry, Dave?
Flashlights,
Absolutely. Why do I want to carry a flashlight?
so you can see.
Absolutely. What happens to all the color when I go down?
I call it graying out. I don't know if that's the right term, but you don't see colors very well.
Yeah, it goes to Technicolor. We lose all our
Yeah.
light color because of
Yeah.
as a penetration, right? It's not able to penetrate to that depth. But it also flashlight's a good marking device or reference device or attention getting device. I can't tell you how often I use my flashlight as a banging tool to make noise, or as a flash. Hey, look at this, or to look in little holes and stuff. So we as well. So there's a lot of uses for a flashlight. One is none, two is one. We want to be able to carry extra flashlights. Aaron, is there anything else I want to carry out of Tech Dive?
Cutting tools.
Absolutely. So cutting tools have a key idea. You want to make sure you have enough cutting tools that you can get to them with either hand. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure you have a minimum of 2, possibly 3. Now, one of the pro tips I can tell you that I found that works really, really, really well. I'm going to go back to me. I'll reach over. Is I've discovered from personal experience having one on your computer. I keep this on my left wrist. It's just a basic Aqualung cheapy. I think they call it a sheep foot if I remember right. I don't remember, but it's got a little hook on it, line cutter. But I keep it on my computer, and it's a nice, easy place to get to it. I usually keep one center chest. I also like to keep one on my left hip as well. But as a pro tip, one on your computer goes a long way, and I can tell you from personal experience, it has saved my life. Well, maybe not saved my life. That may be an over exaggeration, but it has definitely prevented injury. How about that? Twice in my diving career. So having it easy to get to, it's gone, right? Easy to get to. You want to make sure you have it and either that you can get to it with either hand very simply, very easily. And like I said, I carry at least 2 to 3. I think on my current setup, I've got 4 really, because I keep a couple in my tech pockets. I actually have a pair of scissors. I learned the hard way the other day. Have a pair of freaking cutting shears. I was trying to save a freaking sturgeon from a fishing lure, and the son of a gun, the very unkind sturgeon flipped really quick, caused the lure to cut right in, go right into my dry glove and cause a hole in my dry glove. So I had the opportunity to replace my dry glove because that little bastard. So anyway, having a pair of cutting tools would have fixed that, because I could have reached it over and cut the lure off instead of having to try and force it out because my knife wasn't working. So having a few ideas like that is definitely to your advantage, making sure you have the safety precautions. But there's something else maybe we should have as well. John, what do you think? What else should we have as part of our kit that we dive with?
Decompression.
Decompression gas should be a given.
Couple of regulators.
Well, yeah, they're going to have the regulators on your set, right? But as we're diving, and we're at our 130 foot, 110 foot, 150 foot, whatever we're diving, what's some backup gear we should have on us with us while we're diving?
Spare mask.
Spare mask. Yeah, absolutely. Good news. I'm going to give you guys all the opportunity to remove your mask in the nice cold water and put a fresh one on. So a spare mask definitely is something you want to go with. There's a guy over at Interspace. I disagree with what he talks about, but he talks about pre-toothpasting his mask and then taking it off and or putting, he has to go to his spare mask, emergency mask, wiping it clean and then putting it on. I think that's a big mistake in case you come across that video. I just want to precursor that. I have a disagreement with that. If I have a mask emergency and I'm having a problem, I want to be able to get my mask on and deal with whatever situation might come up. So have your mask ready and ready to go, and one that works. I mean, just don't grab your old crap mask that you were going to throw away. And, well, that's good enough. I'll throw that one in, because you may end up having the opportunity to use it. And I promise you'll regret throwing the one in that you were going to throw away anyway. So if you'd like, give it to Goodwill, but don't use it as your backup. Use it when you have your gear. You would definitely, anybody ever had to use emergency backup gear?
It sucks.
Yep.
Absolutely. It sucks that you have to use it, but using crap backup gear is definitely not fun stuff. So make sure take the time, get good backup gear as well. It doesn't have to be, the nicest, biggest, best in the world, but you're definitely going to enjoy having nicer gear as your backup gear should you ever have to use it. And on my stuff, I definitely make sure to check it out as well. I go through on my backup flashlight about once every 3 or 4 months. I take it all apart. I clean the seals. I re-lubricate the seals and make sure everything's good. And then before every dive, I check my backup flashlight. It's easy to forget about it as it sits in my tech pocket. To forget that's in there because there's the stuff I leave in there all the time. I've got a backup mask that I like in there. It's easy to forget about and check to make sure it's still there. Make sure it still works. Check your backup gear as well. We're moving to that point. You want to make sure your gear works for what you're doing. Now in tech diving, one of the big things and this is what I love about side mount, is the idea is we want to keep it simple. Match the equipment to the dive objectives. Does that make sense? If you don't need to carry 6,000 meters of freaking reel, don't carry 6,000 meters of reel. Absolutely. Carry 2-3 reels or 2-3 spools. Absolutely. But make sure that they're 1.5 times the depth that you're going to dive. You don't need to carry a 1,000 meters cave reel with you if you're not going to need it, right? If you're not spearfishing, don't carry spearfishing. So make sure we match the equipment to the dive we're diving. There's no need for me to dive a twin set and a deco bottle if we're going out and doing a simple 60-foot reef for an hour. That's a lot of freaking weight. So be aware of that. Make sure we match what we're doing with the objectives. This is what we talked about earlier with our presentation, that we want to make sure we understand what is our actual objective. Be realistic with that. Proper fit and streamlining. One of the big things you're going to learn really quickly in this is we want to make sure we get streamlined to the gear we're wearing. There's 2 portions of balance. There's obviously the buoyancy that keeps us at a certain level in the water column, but there's our trim. And trim is basically when we get to that point where when we don't move, we close our eyes, we stay in that exact position, right? So once we get to that point where we're streamlined, we're in good dive position, and we don't have to think about that, with good proper fitting gear, we'll stay in that. And because of that streamlining, that proper fit of gear, without having danglies in the right position, we'll go through less gas. We'll have a more enjoyable time. We'll utilize less muscle effort to create the same dive. And we'll have more enjoyment from that as well. Anybody like climbing up a damn hill? If you could if you could get to the top of I think it's Mount Bora in Idaho is the tallest mountain in Idaho, isn't it? Right? Come on, you guys. Some of you have lived here before.
It's Mount Bora. I thought as a Marine you liked climbing hills.
I don't particularly like climbing hills, to be honest with you. I do it for exercise and I like the feeling, but if I could, honestly, if there was a quick elevator that I could get to the top of Mount Bora and go take the elevator to the top of Mount Bora and then take my picture and get off, I'd probably do that, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people would probably do that. So overall, make sure it's easy to do. Easier. Everything you want to do is all about efficiency at this point. We want to make sure we got that proper fit. We're streamlined out. Everything we have is simple and easy to use. The challenge is when shit goes sideways in a big dive, when you're doing this big stuff, it goes sideways. Okay. And what's going to end up happening is the adrenaline's going to start to flow. The oxygen's going to start to deplete because you're hyperventilating and you're going hypoxic and your brain's going to start going into meltdown mode. The simpler you can make your equipment, the easier you can get to things like your knife. Stupid little things like this and making it easy. I can get to my knife. I can get it out. And that's just one of 100 examples. But I want you guys to think about that. If I put my kit on and it's completely pitch black, can I find my reel? Can I find my SMB? Can I find my spare mask? If my light went out and I'm in a cavern and it's completely pitch, or I'm in Ryrie Reservoir at 50 feet or Lucky Peak at 50 feet, which is pitch black, and my light goes out, can I find my spare light and kick it on? Ease of use has got to be a key point for everything you guys do. If you're not thinking ease of use and streamlining this process, you're missing the boat. I'm going to tell you right now.
If you can't do it without looking, you don't know where it is yet.
Exactly. Everything's got to be built around muscle memory. You've got to know where it's at. And the best way to get there 7 days a week, twice on Sunday is simplicity. The more simple you can make something, the better off you're going to be. It's one of my favorite ideas is you don't understand something unless you can explain it simply. You don't understand your gear if it's not simple and you can get to it with your eyes closed. So you got to get to that point. You got to practice. You got to know where those detachable points are. You got to know where you keep your bolt snaps or your double enders. I usually dive when I dive side mount. I dive 3 double enders. I keep them on my my deco hook. I know exactly where they're at. They're on my right hand side. I can reach down with my hand and I can find them exactly every single time. I think Dave saw that a few times with definitely a few things when we were diving together that I could find things without thinking about it.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Well, and part of that as well is consistency. I change one element at a time. I don't change a whole bunch of crap at a time. If I do make one change, I make a small change. I test that equipment before critical dives. I just did a video where I did. I was talking about my dive computer, and I'm going to show that to you guys in a minute. But it's a new dive computer. I'm testing out the new DSX. How brilliant would that be okay, I'm a tech diver. I've got a brand new computer. Let's go out to the river and do a tech dive on a brand new computer. Is that a good idea, bad idea?
Pretty bad.
Bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since you don't know how to use it. So do little dives, try test equipment, put it in the pool, even all the way down to a dive computer. Understand all the key. Because I'm telling you what, I'm reasonably intelligent. I like to think. I think most of you agree that I could pass a minimum IQ test with at least a 50. So I'm not Forrest Gump smart, but I'm smart enough to get by. I got this new computer. I'm going to kick it on. And overall, it looks pretty simple, but where does deco come up on that? How does deco come up on that? Where does that go? What does my ceiling point look like? Where is that going to go? I had no idea. So for me, I started off with, let's just get this in the pool and figure out where does the gas come up at? How do I read gas on this computer? Simple question. Where does the gas come up? I don't know. Let's figure it out. I read the manual and it's supposed to come up at the bottom. Does it? How do I get to the tissue compartments? There we go. There's the blinking thing of death. But where does it all come up with? I mean, there's a lot of pieces that we can easily overlook based upon, well, I've dove a ton and gosh, that DSX, let's see, I've been through, I think that's the 6th different type of diving computer that I've personally used. 6th or 7th. I'll have to think about it for a minute. Overall, you'd think I was pretty proficient at using a dive computer and I'd have a pretty good understanding. I've been through, I mean, how many guys here have used more than 6 dive computers, different dive computers personally? If you've driven more than 2 cars, you probably feel like you're pretty proficient at driving those cars. But I promise you, take that time, take it to pool, test and tune is the way I like to look at it. And the other thing about consistency as well is I'm teaching the guys the basic international consistent version of all the skills. You can certainly take these and switch things around if you want. I can tell you though, an emergency situation that creates a disadvantage. Here's why. Is if I suddenly decide that my primary tank is going to be on my right-hand side, my secondary is on my left-hand side, and there's an emergency and I pass out, they're going to take that right-hand tank off thinking it's my primary tank, and it's going to be a problem. I mean, just little dumb things. Make sure we're consistent with the standard. Primary tank goes on the left with international side mount diving. Short hose goes on the left in consistency with international side mount diving. That's what we all kind of come up with. And there's not the RTC didn't come together and said, you all do it this way. We all kind of came together and through efficiency, and we've come together and we said, okay, this is the standard we all kind of agree on. This is what we feel is best overall. We've come up with some basic consistencies that we put a long hose on our right-hand side. So we've done some basic ideas. So make sure whatever you do is consistent as well with the general standard and consensus of what we're doing. There's generally a reason. One of the things I try and tell people with this, and I think I told this to you, Bryce, when we were talking, is there's a few changes that need to be made, but dive it and get 20 or 30 dives in before you consider making those changes, right? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we went over that.
Absolutely. So learn why it's wrong before you decide it's wrong. At 2 dives, you do not know why it's wrong or if it's wrong. You haven't figured out why it's right yet. So take the time to figure out why it's right or why it's wrong and understand it before you start going through and making those ideas. Because when we start getting into team considerations, we need to understand that how our equipment works and how our teammates' equipment works as well. It's definitely going to be to our advantage to understand that. Does that all make sense, guys? Dustin, why do you think we need to be consistent?
So you're familiar with everybody else's gear. Your gear configuration, while not exact same gear, is similar to your dive buddies. Your tanks are on the same side. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good job, guys. So the other thing we're looking at is reliability and redundancy. So the role of equipment and familiarity to diving accidents is pretty important. We've got to understand how our gear works. John and I decided to go out and we're going to go out and hit printing press. Great, beautiful dive. He's diving a K2. I'm diving a K2. I've got a pretty good understanding of what his stuff is, but I need to dig into that a little bit. Okay, are you running standard international configuration? Are you running short long, short left, long right? Yes. Okay, great. Fantastic. Are you single bladder, double bladder? Great. Understand what's going on. Oh no, I don't like the K2 anymore. I'm running the I don't know, Dive Right Ray, whatever or K2 or the X Deep or whatever you're running. I'm running an SMS 100, whatever it is, right? Understand the basics of that and the familiarity of not just understanding your gear, but your buddy's gear as well. Next piece of that we've talked about, this kind of a basic idea, is the importance of maintenance. Make sure you're checking your gear out on a regular basis. Do dumb things. Check the OPV valve. Make sure it actually functions. I've had those freeze shut. I've had them malfunction and had a spring break inside them. I mean, things happen, right? Be aware. Sand gets in that crap, but make sure you're cleaning this out, and a little maintenance goes a long way. Like I said, about every 3 months, I pull my gear, especially like my lights, anything with seals, and I go ahead and give it a good cleaning. Clean it all and get a fresh little bit of sealing magic on it, and it's good to go. Redundancy is going to definitely go a long way as well. Making sure that our equipment is not only reliable, but we have redundant for whatever we talked about. I think we kind of beat that dead horse. Now, one of the things we want to make sure that we always are able to do as well is that we've got enough that we can loan out as well. You know, never be a lender or borrow be, but in diving, that's not how this works, right? I know the video that I posted on Facebook is funny with him selling the other guy the gas, but you got to make sure that if something happens, and I like to pick on John because he's just a good soul on this and good sport. John and I are diving along. We're diving printing press, and all of a sudden he has a catastrophic gas failure. Do I have enough gas to get him to his deco stop? Do I have enough gas if he has a catastrophic failure with deco? Can I hand him a deco bottle? And do I have enough gas to get through that? So you need to think about those things. What happens if? I mean, we certainly think about ourselves, but we definitely need to be thinking about our buddies as well. The other thing we want to, as we're diving side mount, I want you guys to think about this. Do I need steel? Do I need aluminum? What's the advantages of each? Why should I have a steel cylinder versus an aluminum cylinder? First off, I can tell you diving aluminum is crazy easy. They're lighter. They're very easy to dive in a side mount. But the challenge is, I mean, we've all dove this. You've all dove with me now. You've dove enough aluminums that you know that you have to change the click point on an aluminum cylinder to the front D-rings. You have to. They get light. Those butts get floaty. You look ugly, right? It happens. Other part about that is you're diving a dry suit. Steel cylinders make that really nice. You get to carry less weight if you're diving a steel cylinder. And a lot of times in a steel cylinder, you can carry more gas. Same size cylinder, but you carry more gas. So there's a lot more advantages to that overall, but just I think we've got a pretty good understanding of that. Other thing to be aware of as we're starting to carry cylinders, what's the capacity of them? Is it able to carry the capacity that I need? Does it make sense to carry 280s? Maybe, maybe not. this is a really big dive, and I need more gas? Would it make more sense to dive to HP 100s? Let's think about it. With 2 HP 100s, how much more gas do I get? Well, not only do I get 40 cubic feet more total between the two, but I'm also getting another 40 bar on that as well. So you start talking about 40 cubic feet and 40 bar more. That's considerable amount more gas, truthfully, just by pressure. And would it make sense for me to be able to carry more gas for this dive or more cylinders? Think about the objective of the dive overall.
That'll even give Ivan enough gas to be down for like 7.5 minutes.
Is that 2 117s for Ivan then?
Man,
If
he's
you want me to,
here
if you
for
want me to get more than 5 minutes of bottom time, it better be.
So overall, we've talked about this in kind of detail, but I want to kind of go over just really quickly. I'm not going to take a ton more time, and I think we're going to end up needing another night for this. But overall, we want to think about gas capacity of a tank. The easiest way to figure this out is to understand what the tank size is in liters and multiply it by bar. If you simply do that, you'll have the total number of liters in the tank. If you understand what your current SAC rate is, you'll be able to figure that out very easily. We're going to go over SAC rate in just a moment. But this is the overall simplest and easiest way to figure out how much gas I breathe work against the amount of gas that I can carry. If you understand how much is in the tank, now I can understand against what I can breathe. Now I can figure the math out on that. Just real quick, just for kind of a fun side piece on this. Safety reserve calculations. We talk about this. Bryce, which one should I use? 50 bar or 500 PSI? And is this the same amount of gas in every tank?
It's definitely not the same amount in any tank. You have 50 bar in a 117. You got more air than in a 80.
Sure.
But if you're a good diver, you should know minimum gas, and you should go by that.
Yeah, absolutely. But what's the difference between 50 bar and 500 PSI?
One bar is 14.7 PSI, so whatever that comes out to be.
About 250 PSI difference between the two. Why do you think we use 50 PSI or 500 PSI and 50 bar?
They're easy to remember.
Exactly.
That's where they paint the red on the little gauges.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which, by the way, doesn't match what's actually in the cylinder necessarily.
No, absolutely. So just really quickly, I like pointing this out because this is our way of making life simpler for people. As we start building up processes and policies, always look for the simplest process. Will I really be able to remember 42 bar? Or do I want to try and remember 750 PSI? 50 bar, 500 PSI are both very simple to use and to remember, but in truth, it's about 250 PSI difference between the two. So just be aware. As we do things, we design them to be simpler. The simplest way to get the information for the tank that you're diving, though, is pull up the manufacturer's specs on it. This is straight from Faber overall. Give me 1 second, guys. I need to mute for a second.
And if you look at my presentation, you can see the Catalina numbers.
Absolutely. And if you go to the spreadsheet that I gave you guys, it's got on tab 3, it's got every tank, aluminum, steel that you'll probably ever run into. So I've got it all on there. I just like to throw this on there so you get some quick information on these. So as we're starting to determine tanks, just a few things to think about. Physical size. John talked about this. Type of diving. Are you going to do single mount, back mount, side mount, weight of the tanks? I can tell you, I had a diver ask me this the other day. Hey, I was thinking about side mounting 117 steels. That is a big ass tank to throw on your side for a side mount. That is a really big tank. I've had divers ask me about using an 80 cubic foot for a deco bottle. You can do it. Absolutely. But that is a lot of gas to carry and it's a big tank to manage. So think about the tank management and the overall objective of your dive, what you're trying to do with it. What's the weight of the tank? What's the specifications? I can tell you 117 steel HP is a pain in the butt to trim because it's a short, fat tank. It just doesn't trim really easily. So just be aware as you start looking at these, start looking at the overall size of the tank. These little short bastards are hard to trim. The really, really long ones are hard to trim. So try and start looking at the size of the tank and what's going to be working your dive profile as well. So simple enough to determine the size of a tank. Here's how we do it. We take the total liters. Let's see, find my mouse again here. Total liters times bar equals total liters of gas. If you're trying to work and figure out liters from PSI, simply multiply by 0.06894 or 0.07 if you really just want to make it easier and round. So simple enough, a 117 cubic foot tank is 15 liters. The working pressure is 3442. Multiply that by 0.06894 equals 237 bar. So 15 liters of tank times 237 bar equals 3,555 liters of gas. Now, I'm going to just kind of bridge this just a little bit. We're not going to go too much into it tonight, but that gives you 1,185 usable liters of gas based upon rule of thirds. Now, Dustin, why do you think I talk about the usable gas being 1/3 of the tank?
A third for usable, a third for back, and a third for reserve.
Exactly. Good job. It's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Because I don't think we talked about that today either. I want to skip this one for now. Basically, simply enough, rigging your pony cylinder is very simple. You can use a Jubilee band right at the bottom, a bolt snap, and some paracord for the bottom. And then simply for the top, it's just a bolt snap and some paracord. If it's going to be on your left-hand side, like it should for your first pony bottle or stage cylinder, you're simply going to make sure that it falls at the 3 o'clock position. That everything, the Jubilee. Now, the key point of this, and you guys will see this on Friday night, is you want to give enough space on the lower Jubilee band paracord. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. My words are starting to escape me. You want to make sure you have enough for your hand plus a half more. So 1.5 fistfuls of rope or paracord. That way it's able to get around to the stage point on your cylinder. It's a simple enough way to do it. If you do it 1.5 times, it'll reach over to the stage cylinder very nicely and you won't have to fight it. So, but we're going to go through that. I'd like to do that on scene and just do that briefly on scene. Let's see. I would really like not to talk about jacket BCs. I think you all understand cylinder and auction ratings. Regulators for deep diving. As we started getting into this, I think we ought to just kind of touch on this briefly. This is a critical work life support piece of equipment and criteria. So here's how to choose them. Simple, good, easy work of breathing, balanced. I would suggest sealed as well. I prefer a diaphragmic style as well because they tend to freeze up less. But make sure you talk about that to the manufacturer. And also, is it rated for the gas that I'm going to be using? Most regulators work by Rule 40, which means they're good up to 40%. After 40%, they are not rated for anything above that unless you have them completely rebuilt and rebuilt for auction above 40%. So make sure as we're looking at those deco cylinders and deco regs that you're going to use out on scene, if you're going to be running 55 or 60% or 70 or 80 or 100%, is it rated for that? What does the work of breathing look like on that? So make sure you talk about that and talk to your manufacturer. So if you ordered the Hollis 200 LXs, those are fantastic. They're rated to 55% out of the box. Great regulators, great easy work of breathing. Let's see. We just talked about that. Make sure you get it built accordingly. Skip that. Let's see. We talked about lights. I feel good to go on lights. Let's see here. There's one more thing I would like to cover tonight. Take me a moment to get over to it. Thank you for your patience with me. We don't need to talk about that.
Was Ivan going to present tonight?
I'm going to have Ivan and Dustin and Donnie present on tomorrow night, if that's okay.
Yeah, just curious.
Thank you for catching that, though. Let's see. Oh, here we go. This is what I would like to cover tonight real quick. There's this one, and I want to cover sac rate calculation. So I like this picture. Overall, reels and spools. What's the difference? Dustin, what's the difference between a reel and a spool?
So a spool you have on your fingers, and it's easy. It's smaller, compact, easier to tuck away. Generally has less line. A reel is going to be have a handle, and is going to carry the size of a reel, more line.
Absolutely. The challenge is when you start carrying a reel, it does exactly that. It reels up. You can lock it off into position. It's a lot heavier, but it does definitely carry more line. But I can tell you from personal experience, when you're reeling up from 150 feet, a reel is very nice. If you're stopping at a lot of deco stops, having the ability to lock it into place and clip it off or hold on to it very easily is definitely a game changer for you and makes things a lot nicer. But be aware, they're bulkier, they're heavier, and they will definitely change your trim factors. So be aware where you place them, how you place them. These are the Dive Right style. They're very nice. I use one called Manta. It's from a small company in Florida that for my reel, but it's a big, heavy reel. But it's wonderful for launching an SMB on it and being able to stop it where I want. They have got locking mechanisms, and then just gently reeling that up as I'm coming. I hit my 90 foot. I hit my 80 foot. I hit my 70, my 50, my 40, my 30, my 20. And you reel right back up. It makes it nice and simple and easy to use. They tend to get don't get bound as easily as well. Reels tend to bind up and get tangled a little more easily. So just be aware of that. But reels are nice because they're smaller. You can stick them in pockets, and you can have a couple extra reels as well. So think about that as you guys are going through your equipment. I do not require a reel. I require at least a spool, but reels are definitely very nice. All right. There's one more thing I want to cover tonight, and then we will call it an evening. We'll call it a baked potato. Let's see. We've talked about SMBs, wet notes. I think we'll talk about that on Monday or Wednesday. I mean, sorry. All right. And we're going to go through dive plans tomorrow as well.
Sweet.
I was thinking we might get into it tonight, but I don't think so. All right, here we go. Finally found it. Took me a second. I want to go through this because I want to give you guys an opportunity to play with this. So sac rate calculations. Sac rate gets very complex very fast if you listen to the books, okay? I'm going to give you something a little different. This comes from a different agency. Here's how I would like you guys to calculate your sac rate, if you wouldn't mind. The first thing to do is with any specific cylinder that you know the pressure and the liter size on, okay? So sit down with an 80 cubic foot cylinder that's 11.1 cubic feet, or liters, sorry. Sit in a normal position. As we're measuring sac rate, Aaron, where should we measure our sac rate and why?
On the surface, because it's the surface.
Well, yeah, it's right in the name. Sorry, Alexa keeps turning my lights off in my office. So surface air consumption rates figured out at the surface. So I want you to sit in a normal position at your house. My personal favorite, and Aaron, he's probably sick of hearing this because he listens to my classes. Figure out your sac rate while watching Big Bang. It's about 20 minutes. It's perfect, right? You sit down, put a mask on. Make sure to take pictures of this, by the way, because that just makes it extra fun. And what you want to do is you want to measure the PSI prior to starting. Breathe normally for 20 minutes with a mask on and a regulator in your mouth. Measure the volume and PSI at the end of this. Divide by total minutes and repeat 3 times. That's your average PSI sac rate. But there's a little bit more to it than that. So here's how we figure that out. If we started with 3,000 PSI and we end at 2,500 PSI, that means we used 500 PSI. Now, as John will tell you, metric is much easier to work with. So let's convert it to metric now and get it out of the way.
Right, Ivan?
I'm sorry, say again.
It definitely is easier to use, but harder for some people to get used to.
Absolutely. I get that completely. So if we took 500 psi and we multiplied it by 0.06894, we get 34.47 bar. If we had an 80 cubic foot aluminum tank that we're using, and we say for even numbers, we're just going to say it's 11 liters for easy numbers and easy math. 11 times 34.47 bar means that we used 397 liters of air. All we need to do is take that 397, divide by 20. That means our sac rate was 19.85 liters per minute. Pretty easy, guys. That is our surface air consumption rate. That's all you got to do. Breathe the tank for 20 minutes. Figure out what the PSI is. Multiply it into bar. Multiply that bar by the liters in the tank and divide by the time. It's not rocket science. It may take you a minute or two to get used to, but this is how you figure out your sac rate. Surface air consumption rate. I disagree firmly with any agency that tells you that you need to go on a dive for 20 minutes at 20 feet and measure your before and after gas and that's how you figure out your sac rate. I disagree firmly. For those of you who are into statistics, the adage is garbage in, garbage out. If I put a variable statistic in at the beginning of any equation, how am I going to be able to trust the final data? This data is going to be as accurate as you possibly can be. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more complex. Understanding the effort of sac rate. So, Ivan, where would I use more air? Walking through through Walmart pushing a grocery cart, or running around the track at Boise High School?
Well, running, of course.
Absolutely. So I'm using more effort, right? More effort means more air. So simple enough. I need to understand what that effort is going to affect. So a light dive, low effort could be 1.1 to 1.5. And a typical dive factor in a wetsuit, tropical diving, good visibility, minimal current is going to be about 1.2, 1.3. Okay. Very low effort. A dive in cold water, wearing a dry suit, carrying a camera, working with a current, and being a little stressed out because there's hammerheads in the water could mean a factor of up to 3, maybe even 4, depending upon the heaviness of the current and how big the hammerheads are, right? And how many times we've seen hammerheads that year. So overall, that gives us an idea of where our effort point is. So simple enough to understand our sac rate at depth. The first thing we need to do is understand what the atmospheric pressure is. So to convert our atmospheric pressure, simply 10 and add 1, or divide 33 by 1 for imperial. Simple enough. We understand how to get that. Let's see. Let's skip past that previous slide. So a light effort, no current, 117 cubic foot tank at 3,000 PSI at 66 feet seawater, which is 3 atmospheres, right? Follow me so far? Who's not following me, Bryce? You get me?
Yeah, I'm getting you.
Okay. Sac rate of 14 liters per minute. So 117 is 15 liters. 3,000 PSI times 0.06894 is 206 bars. Means my tank has 3,090 total liters of gas. My 2/3 mix is 2,060 liters of gas. So 14 liters of gas times a minimum effort of 1.5 equals 21 liters per minute. 3 atmospheres of depth times that 21 liters per minute of sac rate equals 63 liters per minute. So if I've got a 63 liter per minute with effort and depth, divide that by 2,060 liters of my 2/3 gas means I have 33 minutes of total dive time available before I need to be at the surface.
I think you flipped that. It's 2060 divided by 63 that gets you the 33 of dive time.
Thank you. That is one of the things I have a hard time with. So I will fix that right now. And because you're absolutely right, I just always put the wrong one first. There we go. Does that look better, John?
Yep.
There we go. Thank you. I've been meaning to check to make sure that was the correct order for a while and just haven't. So 2,060 liters divided by my 63 liters. So Ivan, why did I multiply 14.4 liters per minute times 1.5?
You're trying to figure out your effort of, your extra effort breathing speed, or yeah,
There you
effort.
go. And so if I multiply that out, what does that do to for my calculation?
Well, it adds to it. It increases your overall rate, your liters per minute.
Exactly. That idea of running around the track versus walking through Walmart, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Dave, why am I multiplying 3 atmospheres times my new sac rate?
Because what you're trying to do is trying to find how much you're going to be using at depth, and 3 atmospheres is your depth.
Okay.
So
What law is that?
Henry.
Dave? Nope. Henry's is gas absorption.
Oh, then we had Boyle.
Boyle is exactly right. As pressure increases,
Yep.
volume decreases. So we're using Boyle's law, 3 atmospheres times the 21 liters per minute to equal 63 liters per minute. That's why we're doing that. Make sense?
Yep.
So overall, this is how you figure out sac rate. It's not complicated. It's already built into the math formulas in my spreadsheet for you, but this is how you do it. If you show up on a dive site and suddenly you're handed whatever size tank, you're able to sit down and say, okay, wait a minute. I kicked off that by accident. They handed me an 80 cubic foot tank and it's got 3,000 PSI in it. How much gas do I have? Boom, boom, boom. I've got this many liters of gas that I can use. We're doing a dive today at 99 feet. I know that's 4 atmospheres. And it's going to be a light current dive where I'm just drifting along. So I'll probably have a 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 effort. And I already know because Benjamin told me to go home and watch Big Bang 3 times what my sac rate is. Now you guys can watch 2.5 Men or 2 Broke Girls or whatever comedy you're into. I like Big Bang. That's my go-to. And please, when you guys do this, if you would please do me a huge favor, take a picture of yourself sitting in your living room with your mask and your regulator in your mouth. It's just good fun. I'm just telling you right now.
And drooling with it. Yes.
Absolutely. Make sure to take pictures, post it on your Facebook page. Tag me in the photo. I would love that. Absolutely love that. Guys, we went through a lot. It's definitely getting past some of our bedtimes. So I'm going to go ahead and cap this out and give me a second here. There we go. Back to our presentation. I see Kilroy over here with Aaron. He looks like he's fallen asleep. So, Aaron, you should know who Kilroy is. So overall, we talked about quite a few things. We had you guys do your presentations to kind of start getting the idea of how that looks, what that looks like, and why we might want to start getting some basic ideas of that. Bryce, what are 3 key pieces that we learned in the how to do a presentation that apply to a dive site or doing a dive?
So you need to state your objectives at the beginning. You need to ask direct questions during it, and then repeat your objectives after.
Absolutely. Outline. But how about outline the overall point of the dive? We're going to do this, this, and this. So objective, value, and main points, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So those things, some of the things we looked at. We definitely went through that. We let you guys learn a little bit about the subjects. We talked briefly about pony bottles. We talked briefly about different sizes of cylinders as well. We went through some equipment configurations, and we had an opportunity to learn a little bit more about how to get to proper balance and weight by John. That was a great conversation. We learned a little bit about temperature effects underwater by Dave. We talked about DCS with Bryce. And then we rounded that all out with a little bit of deco theory and absorption with Aaron tonight. We're going to hear from Dustin and Ivan and Donnie on tomorrow as well. I am anticipating we're probably going to need another class, but we'll see. We also discussed a little bit about how to do the deco planner. So I'm expecting tomorrow that we'll be playing with the Deagle planner, and you guys will see the actual dive plans that are not screwed up. We also talked about a very important piece. Dustin, which dive plan do you use first? We plan first.
Plan your contingency.
Absolutely. Why?
That's the worst case scenario. Everything's uphill from there.
Absolutely. If I can't do the worst case scenario, how can I do the best case scenario?
Yep.
Absolutely. Guys, I've gone through quite a bit and given you quite a bit. What questions can I answer for you today?
I have a question, and this is Dave.
Yep.
You're talking about building the contingency plan first, then the actual dive. Why wouldn't you want to build your dive first, then build the contingency plan and add them together? Is there just a different way of thinking?
Nope. So the idea is if you build your contingency plan first, then you can find out if you can do your actual dive. Because if you build a dive and then you go through the work of that and build your 5 + 5 and you can do that, but you get to your 10 + 10, you can't do your 10 + 10, then you've just wasted a bunch of time. It's the first problem. The second problem is if I can't plan for failure, then I can't do the dive. I've got to be able to plan for failure first. What happens if? Will I be, and if I can't plan for failure and accomplish that, then the rest of it's moot. I can't do any of it. I've got to be able to accomplish the emergencies first. If you don't plan for the emergencies, you won't be able to handle them.
Okay.
Another way to kind of think about it is if you build your contingency first, then your actual dive is just the contingency minus 10 minus 10. And away you go.
Exactly.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yep. So always, if you plan for failure, if you're failing to plan, you're planning for failure. So we're going to plan for failure because we're planning, we're making our plan, right? So hope for the worst or expect the worst, hope for the best. If everything went shit sideways, you can still handle the dive. No big deal. And everybody's going to come back alive. Hopefully that didn't happen. You know, I can tell you, I don't know, I'm north of 2,000 dives at this point, and I've never had a massive, catastrophic, everything balls against the wall, crash, failure. I haven't had that. But I've also planned accordingly to make sure that I had the ability, if something happened, what would I do? Certainly had a free flow regulator before, went to my backup gas. You know, I've had some weird things. Shit happens. It's part of diving. It's part of life, right? You know, I would be willing to bet there's 7 of us on this call. Every one of us has had a car accident of some kind. Maybe it was minor, but every one of us has had some sort of a car accident. Did you, Bryce, when you had your first car accident, did you want to have the car accident?
Well, I haven't had one, so.
You never backed into something, backed into the garbage can, backed over something?
Nope.
Put your coffee cup on the top of the car?
Popped a tire.
Popped the tire? Did you want that to happen?
Nope.
Were you glad you had a spare?
Yep.
Absolutely. You planned for failure by having a spare. So plan for failure. We have a spare tire and seatbelts in our car because we plan for failure, not because we're hoping for the best. So that's my pitch on it for the day. Same thing with car insurance. We have car insurance for a reason, not because we like paying some nameless, faceless corporation large sums of money. Fair enough? Gotcha. Okay, guys. Anything else? Going once? Bueller? Okay. Well, if that's all there is tonight, good job, guys. I'm excited with where we're going. I would anticipate that we're going to need to add another class. So you guys just might as well kind of throw that in your plan. I am free on the 23rd currently, I believe. I may be in Boise though. So I may be doing this remotely and from Boise on that night. So just heads up.
23rd works for me.
Perfect. So that's kind of what I plan on. So yeah, I'll be crashing at John's house, of course, because John and I are tight like that. We're going to braid each other's hair. It's going to be cute. So, right, John?
Exactly.
No, I will be over at the Hampton. Probably, I like the one by the mall. So that's where I'll be hanging out and probably doing this class from. Most likely, I think I've got to go to Boise next week. I haven't gone to Boise this month, and I don't want to go to Boise. I don't like Boise. Sorry, John. I don't care for Boise.
I got to go to Boise tomorrow morning.
I wish I could count your trip as mine too.
Let's go hop in the pool while you're up here.
Yeah, I'll be there at 5 or leaving here at 5 tomorrow morning and then work until midnight. So I doubt it. But,
Ivan, that does bring a good point up. If I do the class on Tuesday, I could probably do, let's see, let me look at the calendar here. So 23rd, 24th. I could probably do the pool the evening of the 24th. Let me look at my schedule. Do you guys want to do some pool time?
I'd like to. I have access to a saltwater pool. It's not the warmest right now, but it's not as cold as Bear Lake, so it's mid-70s.
Okay. Okay. Let me look at my schedule on that and see what I've got going. So, because I got to see what my meetings and everything are accomplishing. But if that's the case, maybe I'll throw a couple aluminums in the truck or in the car and go from there. Or maybe just see if you guys can come up with a pair of aluminums for me so I don't have to carry them in my little Zoom. I've got a Mazda CX-5 that I drive for work.
I'm sure we can figure out something. So
yeah, if you can come up with 2 basic aluminums, I'm good. Everything else is easy for me. So cool. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure. It's been real. And hopefully it's been really fun.
yes.